18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Me and my mum, and it looks real, doesn't it?
It isn't. I thought that was real when I first saw it.
Not that you'll be able to see it, but anyway, it's me and mum.
Things like that, AI is amazing, isn't it? Because your mum's no longer with us.
Yes.
You've got a lovely video of you hugging her.
Yeah.
Which is lovely.
Which is not real, but anyway. It's but I liked it. Like the idea, I thought they've done it very well.
Yeah.
It's quite. But good luck to kids learning to tell the difference between all of that.
Well, we are talking about education today. Lots of you getting in touch. Edmund says, my grandson ended up going to hospital with stress over his exams. GCSEs are too much, I think. They've gotten harder and harder. They're not like they were when I was at school. I only got 3 exams done at 16 and then I dropped out afterwards.
What, you get 3 exams at 16?
That's what Edmund got. He says GCSEs are much harder now.
There we go.
Peter says some of us were self-sufficient at 15 years old. We were growing our own food, we were collecting fuel for our fires, and we had paper jobs, not playing with phones and on social media all the time.
That's a very good point. That's absolutely right. You know, people were fighting in the First World War and the Second World War at 15, 16, 17. And, you know, I mean, pressure. I mean, I just think I think we should teach kids to be more resilient.
Yes.
That's the thing. I think that you just can't say they've buckled and we see that as the latest stage. Some of you may agree with me, but I mean, everybody. I mean, how the heck? I could bore you silly, believe me, bore you silly with pressure and things you did for school and you know, what was expected. There was just no tolerance for any leniency in my school at all, but we got through it and I can say happiest days of my life still.
Well, maybe resilience needs to be taught in the national curriculum. Maybe it needs to be taught more
Resilience,
at home.
good idea.
GB News, the People's Channel.
A really important thing about GB News, and it's brought something completely different to the landscape.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, the reality is that most British journalists are afraid. That's not GB News.
Journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
We're here to talk about things in a way that have never been broadcast on British airways before.
Do not miss a moment on GB News.
The #1 news channel in the country.
Very, very good afternoon to you and a happy Monday. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live across the UK. All the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. And here's what's coming up on today's action-packed show.
We will announce the most significant changes to our asylum system in modern times.
Yes, the Home Secretary is to unveil Labour's so-called tough and uncompromising Danish-style asylum and immigration crackdown, pledging to unite a divided country. But with lawyers, MPs and the ECHR threatening to derail the plan, we'll ask if it's doomed to fail. First, they taxed our Cornish pasties, and then they came for our fizzy pop. But now Rachel Reeves is proposing a milkshake tax. The fun tax could net the Treasury up to £100 million a year. But will it be the final straw for embattled British dairy farmers? And fly tippers have dumped hundreds of tons of waste stacked 10 metres high in a field in Oxfordshire. And the removal cost is greater than the entire annual budget of the local district council. We'll speak to a furious environmentalist. And also coming up on today's show.
Officers came in, I was on a Zoom call just like this, and arrested me. And in the sitting room, another pair of officers arrested my partner, Rosalind, in front of our 3-year-old.
6 police officers arrested Maxie and Rosalind Allen earlier this year for WhatsApp comments made about their daughter's primary school. Well, police have now paid them £20,000 in damages. You can't even get a cop to turn up to your burglary. And that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. It's always a pleasure to have your company. It's D-Day for the Labour government on a serious scale. The tough new plans to crack down on immigration, will they be enough to stop the Labour ship from sinking without trace? They're already being called as destined to fail, attacked by lawyers, the Lords, Lovies and left-wingers on the Labour Party, already a significant verbal rebellion. Will that translate into a backbench rebellion at the vote level? And anyway, will any of these plans have a single chance of getting through? Will the usual suspects try to stop them? Or is this the last chance to save the Labour Party from the small boats crisis and ballooning illegal immigration and asylum? Get in touch with your thoughts. GBNews.com/Your Say is the way to do so. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. The latest news headlines at 3:02. Sweeping reforms to the UK's asylum system will be announced this afternoon. Under the plans, asylum seekers will be returned home once their country is deemed safe, and most will face a 20-year wait before applying for permanent settlement. Deportations will also be sped up when claims are rejected, with a new drive to cut multiple appeals and close off routes that ministers say are being used to delay removals. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is also threatening visa bans on 3 African countries if they fail to cooperate on taking back illegal migrants. But the overhaul is already proving divisive. Several Labour MPs have publicly criticised the changes. Backbencher Stella Creasy labelled the reforms performatively cruel. While leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, says her party will lend support to Labour.
I do welcome the government's announcements. It is nowhere near enough. We're going to work with them to try and get this through. Because what I know is that a lot of Labour backbenchers hate this stuff. We've already had about 10 of them come out to criticise their own government. They're going to need us if this is actually going to work. But the truth is, it doesn't go far enough. Unless we leave the ECHR, I suspect Shabana Mahmood is going to run into the same legal problems that the Conservative government ran into.
Elsewhere today, the chairman of the BBC has told staff there is no basis for a defamation case after Donald Trump announced plans to sue the corporation for up to £5 billion over an edited panorama clip. In an internal email, Samir Shah said the BBC is determined to fight and is mindful of its duty to protect licence fee payers amid speculation over potential legal costs. It follows President Trump's accusation that the broadcaster cheated by altering his January the 6th speech, despite the BBC already apologising for what it called an error of judgment in the edit. The fallout has already led to the resignations of Director General Tim Davie and the news chief Deborah Turness, with the Panorama episode permanently withdrawn from broadcast. A couple in Hertfordshire say police have paid them damages after they were arrested in January for comments made in a parents' WhatsApp group about their daughter's primary school. Rosalind and Maxie Allen were held for 11 hours after officers say they needed to investigate claims of harassment and malicious communications. No charges were brought, and the couple now say they're very unhappy with the force, arguing that people under investigation are often given almost no information about why they're being targeted. They warn cases like theirs make it look like police are policing free speech when investigations collapse. Bangladesh's former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been sentenced to death. She's been found guilty of ordering last year's crackdown on student protests, where the UN says up to 1,400 people were killed. Hasina, tried while in exile in India, has called the verdict biased and politically motivated. The ruling puts pressure on New Delhi to extradite her, though that remains unlikely. Security is now tightening across Bangladesh as protests are starting to erupt over the verdict. Police say organised gangs are using increasingly sophisticated tactics to steal cargo from lorries across the UK, including buying legitimate haulage companies, collecting loads and then disappearing with the goods. The Road Haulage Association says the money is fueling wider criminal networks, warning thieves are becoming more intelligent and using cybercrime to target high-value items. Last year, the value of stolen goods jumped by nearly 2/3, even as the number of incidents fell. Assigned criminals now need to slash fewer curtains to know exactly what's worth taking. And a cold weather warning is in effect, with snow and ice expected as temperatures plunge. The UK Health Security Agency has issued the alert for the East and West Midlands, the North East, North West and Yorkshire, running through to next week. It follows the coldest night since March over the weekend, when temperatures dropped to -7 in the Scottish Highlands. Officials say the freezing conditions could pose risks for vulnerable people, urging the public to check in on those who may need support. Those are the latest GBNews headlines. More from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3174 and €1.1362. The price of gold is £3,094.79 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 9,687 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
Thank you, Katie. What a week of politics we've got ahead of us. Let's get cracking. Today, the Home Secretary is set to introduce some of its toughest measures yet on illegal migration, with countries that refuse to take back failed asylum seekers or foreign criminals to face a so-called total visa ban. Shabana Mahmood will set out the new plans in Parliament later on this afternoon in what the government says are the most sweeping reforms to tackle illegal migration in modern times. Well, to dissect what lies ahead of us, will it have any impact? Will it be allowed to get through at all? I'm joined in the studio by GBNews' political correspondent Olivia Utley and also the former Conservative Immigration Minister Tom Pursglove. Welcome to you both. Olivia, let's start with you. We were expecting Shabana Mahmood to pop up around about 3:30, but three urgent questions which I put to you aren't that urgent are getting in the way. I digress. What do we know about what's going to come out today? We've heard a lot of detail, emulating the Danes, one of the toughest asylum systems on the planet, certainly in mainland Europe. But the big question is, will the Labour backbenchers, will the lawyers, will the ECHR, will the usual suspects allow this to go through?
Well, this is an absolutely huge day for the government. It is Keir Starmer's basically last-ditch attempt to try and get his party back on side. Labour polling is down at 18%. That's the lowest it's been since the 2007-2008 financial crash. They are desperate to get something done to get people back on side. Shabana Mahmood was installed as Home Secretary to make the party look serious about immigration. Today, she's presenting this radical shake-up of the immigration system. As you say, it would essentially copy what Denmark is doing. That has worked incredibly well in Denmark. Illegal migration is down 90%. Some of the measures are, for example, reviewing an asylum seeker's claim to asylum every 2 to 3 years. So at the moment, if you're granted asylum in the UK, you can stay here indefinitely. Under Shabana Mahmood's new policy, what would happen is every 2 to 3 years, it would be assessed whether or not your country would be safe to return home to. If it's safe to return home, you would return home. Another thing which has caught a lot of eyes today is this idea, which they're doing in Denmark, where if you bring over jewellery or valuable assets with you,
£1,000 worth.
£1,000 worth, then the government can seize those assets in order to fund your stay in the UK. Now, in practice, this doesn't really amount to very much, because things like wedding rings or heirlooms would be exempt. So it's only for asylum seekers who come over with whole bags of gold, essentially. So it wouldn't actually raise very much money. But of course, the whole idea is making it a hostile environment for asylum asylum seekers. Now, that brings us on to how badly it could potentially go down, not only with judges, with the ECHR, but also with Labour backbenchers themselves. The policy is yet to formally be announced in the House of Commons. We were expecting it, hopefully, during your show, Martin. And already 17 Labour backbenchers have come forward to publicly express their disgust, in the words of one MP. Then we've got not just morally wrong, it's politically disastrous. That's Richard Burgeon from Leeds East. It's morally bankrupt and politically disastrous. Ian Byrne, Liverpool West Derby. I mean, there's so many of these quotes saying disgust about the policy. So the idea that Shabana Mahmood is going to get this through the House of Commons is one that I think is quite difficult for many people in Westminster to accept at the moment. I think we can expect a huge backbench rebellion. But even if she does manage to get it through the Commons, then there is, of course, the problem of the ECHR. Now, the Conservatives and Reform have both said that they would leave the ECHR in order to shake up the asylum system, because, as we know, and as I'm sure Tom can attest to, when the Conservatives tried to enact its Rwanda policy to get asylum seekers going to a third country, it was stopped by the ECHR. Now, most people in Westminster are now of the opinion if you don't leave the ECHR, it is very, very difficult to practically do anything about asylum. So there are a lot of hurdles that Shabana Mahmood will have to get over if this policy is going to come to anything. And the first one is her own backbenchers.
Tom Percival, that leads us neatly into you. I've been through these 17 Labour MPs, and to a point, all of them are destined to lose their seats at the next general election if we follow the current polling. And here's the funny thing. People like Stella Creasy, Walthamstow, who call it performative cruelty, she'll lose a seat to the Greens. So she needs to look like refugees welcome, or she's toast. Dr. Simon Ofer in Stroud will only survive by the skin of his teeth if the Greens vote tactically against reform to keep him in. I could go on. Every single one of these MPs is either going to lose to reform, so why on earth are a turkey voting for Christmas here? I don't know. Or they're going to lose to the Greens anyway. We have a party that's incredibly divided. Can they ever agree on what's going to come out today? And will there be enough, do you think, of a backlash to vote this down?
Yeah, I think this is destined for failure on several fronts. I mean, firstly, the political hurdles that Keir Starmer's going to be facing. I welcome the fact that actually there is a bit of a recognition here about the scale of public concern about this issue. But I don't think that a lot of his backbenchers are going to be convinced on this. If you're up against a Green opponent or a Your Party, if that ever amounts to anything, opponent, you are not going to want to be on the record voting for these sorts of measures. But beyond that, there's also just the practical realities of this. This is all going to be a forlorn, vain attempt at trying to shift the dial on this issue unless you do something about the upstream fundamentals of the problem. You have to have a deterrent at the front end in order to stop people coming in the first place, but you also have to be willing to do whatever is necessary around the ECHR and around the Human Rights Act. We've been through this time and time again. Public opinion now is firmly behind firm action on this. This sounds tough, but I don't actually think in practice it will amount to much at all.
Olivia Utley, there's been some degree of head-scratching as well about the so-called visa ban. 3 nations have been singled out: Angola, Namibia and the Democratic Republic of Congo. If they don't take their illegal immigrants back, they'll face tough sanctions. I've also been through the data here because I'm sad and I'm time-rich and I care about accountability. These countries are a drop in the ocean of the illegal immigrants that come to this country. In fact, between those entire 3 nations, last year, only 6,100 visas were even administered. 70% of them were tourist visas, out of a total of 3.1 million. That's 0.2%. Why are they picking on Angola, Namibia, the DRC, when clearly tens of thousands are coming here illegally from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Eritrea? I put it to you, they're picking on small targets to appear tough, and they're scared to go for the big nations in case there's severe political kickback.
Well, I think, yeah, that is certainly the cynic's view. I think people around Shabana Mahmood would probably argue that you can start with these smaller countries and then you can kind of progress to showing that you're tough with other countries on the world stage. But I think it's absolutely right that there could be a much bigger kickback in the House of Commons. Shabana Mahmood is essentially treading a tightrope here because she wants to get reform-swaying voters back on side. She knows that over and over again, survey after survey, week after week, shows that the top issue concerning British voters is immigration. She wants to show that she is serious about that. But as you say, there is a danger that if she goes sort of too hard too soon, she risks alienating some of her own Labour backbenchers. And there is some substance to that, to their worry, because yes, there are Labour votes which are bleeding away to reform. We are seeing that in the polls week after week. But as we saw, for example, in the by-election in Caerphilly, there were also Labour votes going away to the left too. And the rise of Zach Polanski and the Green Party is interesting too, because it shows that there is a real genuine threat to Labour MPs from the left. Shabana Mahmood is trying to balance two very difficult things here. And the way she seems to have done it is by sounding very, very tough, but actually leaving open a little bit of wiggle room for sceptical backbenchers.
Tom, let me put the point to you. A lot of people looking at this today and just saying, it's too little, it's too late. The country is already packed to the rafters with immigrants coming in. It's packed with illegal immigrants. What we really need are deportations. This is closing the stable door after the horse has bolted, to use that metaphor. Is that the point? And it won't even be a deterrent to stop them coming in, but do need to actually go for mass deportations.
Well, things like visa penalties will make a difference, but at the margins. And as you say, unless you are going to apply that, for example, on the biggest volume of overstaying on visa countries, the nationalities that provide the greatest number of overstays, it's going to make very little difference. So, for example, the Indian overstaying rate is very high compared to those countries that you mentioned. And those arrivals as well, who come in small boats, don't come on illegal migration visas anyway. And so you just have to bear that in mind when you look at these announcements. What the public want to see is the detention and relocation of individuals who arrive. That is the only way that you are going to shut the Channel route down. But this is yet another example, and I think this goes to the heart of the problem, that the country is burnt out with over-promising and under-delivering, and rather like the one-in, one-out deal, which was the last time that we heard from this government, this major new policy announcement that was going to shift the dial, it was going to see a sea change. Yeah. And they said, yes, it will start small, but we haven't seen the scale, and it's had an absolutely zero positive effect in terms of arrival numbers. And you also have to look at things like welfare reform. The Prime Minister talked tough on welfare reform, but at the first sign of Labour backbenchers getting restless, he dropped it. I just don't think that this will happen.
Tom, let me give you my final piece of data today, and this can be used in a pub quiz anywhere. When this comes up in the future, guess how many small boat illegal immigrants came from those three countries combined, Angola, Namibia and the Democratic Republic of Congo, since 2018. In 6 years, three nations. Have a guess.
I'm going to say 10.
Almost. How many do you think, Olivia?
Ooh.
In total, three nations, 6 years.
15.
The answer is 6.
Wow.
6 from three nations. Why on earth Shabana Mahmood is picking on these nations, I simply do not understand. Thank you very much to you, Tom, and to Olivia. We can go now to our next guest, because Glasgow is the UK city with the largest number of asylum seekers outside of London, and we can now cross there live and speak with GBNews Scotland reporter Tony Maguire. Tony, there's been a backlash north of the border as well. They're saying, despite the fact they have a huge number of asylum seekers, some people in politics are saying refugees should continue to be welcome.
Yeah, that's right, Martin. Good afternoon. Well, you know, we reported earlier this year in March time that Glasgow City Council had to put the brakes on its place as a destination city, a dispersal city, because the city was at risk of social cohesion breakdown. And then the SNP Council here in Glasgow tried to get in touch with Yvette Cooper, but their calls were not answered, and that really ended to them putting a pause on that system. Scotland and indeed Glasgow specifically has been a huge proponent of welcoming refugees, but over time that has started to cost tens of millions of pounds a year. And now around this time last year, the average number of immigrants or asylum seekers resettling in Glasgow with their leave to remain shot up from 60 to about 180, and that's what's led to 4,000 of the city's 7,000 temporary accommodation beds being filled by asylum asylum seekers. Now, this has obviously caused many a story of animosity over the last few months, but given Shabana Mahmood's announcement with regards to the Danish model of immigration, well, Scottish Social Justice Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville, she came out to say she was deeply concerned that these moves would plunge more people further into poverty here in Scotland. But the comment Shabana Mahmood made that caught my eye most of all was that the immigration conversation is tearing our country apart. So I came out to the streets of Glasgow and I put to people that very question: do they think that immigration is tearing our country apart? You think our conversation around immigration is pulling the country apart?
I do think so. I think especially because now you'll see a Scottish flag, and I don't have national pride when I see it. I associate that with a movement that I don't necessarily want to be a part of.
You know what I think in this country? I was talking to my mate about this the other day, right? I think it's not like America where people are like screaming and shouting at each other over across the TV. People, either you think one thing and you think the other thing, right? And then nobody discusses it, apart from a couple of pints.
I'm not too bothered.
Not too bothered?
I'm happy enough with people coming here if they work and pay their way and stuff, but too many people coming in illegally is not good for anyone.
For me, immigrants are welcome here, so I don't agree with all that rhetoric, but I don't know, I think we're past the point of no return, to be totally honest.
Did you spot it? Did you spot the very moment that kind of explained there our problem up in Scotland with the immigration conversation? That gentleman there talking away with his pal, he couldn't even be part of that conversation. He walked away while his pal was saying that we don't talk about it here, and that really is it. Obviously we don't have small boats landing on Scottish shores, and the knock-on effect of that is that our conversation about immigration up in Scotland is really stunted. We haven't quite got it off the ground yet, and some might argue we don't know how to have it.
Well, I would say to you, Tony Maguire, if the SNP want to be refugees welcome, let's just organise a load of old coaches. Let's just get them all up north of the border and see if they're so welcome then. Let's see how the voters take them then. Tony Maguire, thanks for joining us live from the streets of Glasgow. Always a pleasure. Now, still to come, we'll discuss why milkshakes will be part of the solution to fill the ever-changing budget's black hole facing the Chancellor, just so long as you don't throw them at Nigel Farage. Is there anything Rachel Reeves won't tax? And also next, we'll continue our build-up to the Home Secretary's so-called sweeping new asylum and deportation reforms. This is GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray,
Are you a human trafficker?
boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Well, debate time is 3:26 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, elsewhere in politics today, there are swirling rumours that the former Deputy PM, Angela Rayner, is, quotes, sharpening her knives for a potential leadership contest. Now, something she was described as total rubbish. Now, this comes after a tumultuous week for the Labour Party in which the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, also denied plotting against the Prime Minister and called out a toxic culture in Number 10. Well, I'm still joined in Westminster by our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Olivia, welcome back. A lot of people will look at this and think, hang on a minute, wasn't this the same person who was basically fired over a 40 grand stamp duty bill and perhaps should have retired quietly to the back benches? Now, Angie's back.
Well, on the face of it, it does seem ludicrous. Angela Rayner was booted out just 2 months ago for failing to pay this £40,000 stamp duty bill. And one would have thought in ordinary times that someone like that would have to have a pretty long spell on the back benches before currying favour again with the party members and the voters. But these aren't ordinary times. And as we were saying a little earlier, Labour's popularity ratings haven't been lower in 20 years. Keir Starmer is incredibly unpopular, and whatever they say to journalists, whatever the party line is, Labour MPs and even some ministers are seriously thinking about a new leader. Why Angela Rayner? Well, in spite of her baggage, her slightly checkered past and very recent checkered past, she is a popular figure. She's thought to be charismatic. She's a very good dispatch box performer, something which you may not be able to say about her replacement, David Lammy, who had a pretty appalling deputy PMQs by any standards a couple of weeks ago. She also had an ability as deputy Labour leader to unite the left and right of the party, something which is desperately needed at the moment, as we're seeing these new immigration proposals Shabana Mahmood, who seems to be on the right of the party, is putting forward, are an absolute anathema to Labour MPs on the left of the party. They're talking about their disgust, they're talking about the moral ineptitude of these plans. So the idea of getting a leader who could unite the left and right is very, very tempting indeed, someone who could bring back both the Green voters and the Reform voters back under the Labour umbrella. And some people are suggesting that Angela Rayner is the person who could do just that.
Again, I've looked at my data because I follow the data like a hawk at the moment in terms of the seat predictions. Angela Rayner is set to lose her seat at the next election to Reform. Shabana Mahmood would lose her seat to the Corbyn party, Your Party. Ed Miliband, another name that's been touted as leadership material, he would also lose to Reform. Wes Streeting would lose his seat to Corbyn's outfit. My point is, these so-called kings over the water, queens over the water themselves are standing on quicksand. They're destined to lose their own seats.
I mean, we are now so far out from an election, some of these predictions don't quite work. I think just in the lead up to an election, you can start talking about which individual seats could sway one way or the other. But we are still nearly 4 years out from an election, and I think it is impossible to predict the exact seats. The good thing about Angela Rayner or Shabana Mahmood, they at least have seats at the moment. The other potential candidate as a Labour leader is Andy Burnham, who, of course, as Mayor of Manchester, and he said he wants to complete his tenure as Mayor of Manchester, which doesn't finish until May 2026. If there were to be a leadership election soon, and the whispers in Westminster are that there could be, then Andy Burnham is ruled out. So, yes, some of these MPs might be on shaky ground. It looks like anything is to play for at the next general election. But week after week, the polls show Labour hemorrhaging votes both to the left and the right. But everything is in a huge, huge state of flux, and I don't think we can make individual predictions now. Yes, they are all on slightly shaky ground, but at least they have seats for now, and they are, for the most part, more popular than the current Prime Minister.
But we can make predictions based on polls for those forthcoming elections in May, Holyrood, Senedd, and also the council elections, and it looks to be, at present, an absolute bloodbath for the Labour Party. A lot of people then will start saying post-May, perhaps June, just before summer recess, there could be moves made on Sir Keir Starmer. So is that where we're at? Things are so bad, it could be somebody that could potentially lose their seat who could be the heir to the Labour throne.
Well, I think we're not likely to see any moves against Keir Starmer until next May. Now, might have egg on my face when he's deposed later this week, but I suspect it won't be until May. Those elections are predicted to be a bloodbath, but I think Labour MPs are worried about the idea of having a leadership contest before that, because that would divert both attention and funds away from those May elections. And I think it's also worth mentioning that no Labour leader has ever been deposed in the middle of a parliamentary term. Tony Blair, of course, said that he was going to stand down at a specific time. He named his own execution date, if you like. So whereas the Conservative Party do have a history of getting rid of leaders and appointing new ones, it would be unprecedented for Keir Starmer to be got rid of and replaced. So I think that Labour MPs will give him a little bit more of a chance. Let's not forget he did win this huge majority just 18 months ago. So I think we're looking at after May. But after that, it's anyone's guess. Thank you very much, Olivia Oatley. Now, just to repeat a statement, a source close to Angela Rayner dismissed these claims as total rubbish on Saturday night, insisting she was instead focused on representing her local community. Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 4 p.m, including we'll discuss why milkshakes might be part of the solution to fill the ever-changing budget black hole facing the Chancellor. Is there anything Rachel Reeves won't tax? Will it be the final straw for our dairy industry? But first, here's your latest news headlines with Katie Bowen.
Good afternoon. The headlines at 3:32. Sweeping reforms to the UK's asylum system will be announced this afternoon. Under the plans, asylum seekers will be returned home once their country is deemed safe, and most will face a 20-year wait before applying for permanent settlement. The Home Secretary will unveil the overhaul in Parliament this afternoon. The chairman of the BBC has told staff there is no basis for a defamation case after Donald Trump announced plans to sue the corporation. Samir Shah said the BBC is determined to fight in an internal email. Bangladesh's former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been sentenced to death. She's been found guilty of ordering last year's crackdown on student protests, where the UN says up to 1,400 people were killed. And a cold weather warning is in effect, with snow and ice expected as temperatures plunge. The UK Health Security Agency has issued the alert for the East and West Midlands, the North East, North West and Yorkshire, running through to next week. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of today, it will stay dry for many of us, but in the north and east we will see a few showers. Some of these falling as snow across the far north of Scotland, where there is a risk of ice overnight. And we will see that wetter, sleetier weather become a little bit more widespread across parts of Scotland and northern England through Tuesday. But through tonight, we'll continue to see showers across the far north of Scotland, so we could see some ice on the roads. Elsewhere, it will turn quite chilly overnight with clear skies, particularly across eastern areas. So we're expecting a widespread rural frost by tomorrow morning. But across western areas, Northern Ireland in particular, a blanket of cloud will keep temperatures a little bit above zero. But we'll start to see this rain falling as sleet and snow, particularly over the high ground of parts of central, southern Scotland, parts of the Pennines as well. The highest parts of the Pennines could see some sleety accumulations as well. Quite a lot of cloud around across more central, southern areas of England as well, but it's further north and west where we'll see a much wetter start to the day, and it's going to feel quite wintry. As I said, we do have warnings in force throughout Tuesday, all the way through until Thursday, in fact, for wintry hazards such as snow and ice. It's the first spell of winter, so do take care if you're travelling over the next few days, particularly in the evenings and early mornings. And we will see some more widespread rain spread across more northern areas throughout Tuesday. That will push into the far south and east by the end of the day, but it should remain fairly dry and bright for a lot of the day across the far southeast. Temperatures across the southeast 9 or 10 degrees, a little bit warmer than elsewhere. We've got a very brisk northerly wind bringing quite a chilly feel. Now, the snow warnings continue across parts of Scotland through Tuesday evening. We'll start to see some accumulations above around 150 metres, and it's going to get even colder as we head to Wednesday and Thursday. That's when we're expecting the coldest part of the week, with further snow for many northern areas.
Thank you, Britain, for making us the fastest growing news website in the nation, because the truth matters, and so do you.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Congestion exists on the A4232 northbound from St Fagans to M4 junction 33. In Lancashire, the M6 northbound between junctions 27 and 28 has 50-minute delays due to an overturned vehicle, with 2 lanes closed. In Warwickshire, 40-minute delays are reported on the M42 northbound between junction 9 and junction 10 due to a collision, with improvements expected between 6:30 and 6:45 tonight. And on the trains, Great Western Railway replaces services with road transport between Exeter St David's and Barnstaple. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Time is 3:37. You're with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now it's time now for the Great British Giveaway, and there's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to enjoy Christmas honours this year at GB News. That's right, 40 grand in tax-free moolah, shopping vouchers, and a GB News festive goodie bag. Here's all the details you need to be our festive bumper winner.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you could win your Christmas this year paid for by us. First, we'll give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash, so you can have a brilliant new year. Then we'll give you a further £10,000 cash to spend on all your Christmas presents, the decorations, even the tree. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with £1,000 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. And the best news? You'll get it all in time for the big day. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing the 8th of December. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, first they came for our fizzy drinks, then they came for our Cornish pasties. And now the Chancellor Rachel Reeves is toughening up so-called sugar taxes and extending them to milkshakes. Now this, of course, is in a bid to help combat obesity in Britain, and, of course, to raise a lot of wonga for the Treasury, because this could mean that some sugary milkshakes will be hit with a charge of 26p for every litre just in tax. Now, remember, back in 2023, the Prime Minister said that he didn't want to add to the burden of food costs. Well, make your mind up. Let's now speak with the economist, Vicky Price. Vicky, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company. They tax anything that moves, and now they tax anything we drink. OK. Fair enough. Soft drinks, sugary drinks, empty calories. But milkshakes, surely it's the final straw.
Well, yes, they were exempted from that levy because you do have that levy on Coca-Cola, for example, Pepsi and so on, so other soft drinks. But those that are milk-based were exempt. And the interesting thing is that now they're thinking of changing that, assuming that is true. What worries me is that, yes, it's yet another tax and it's just going to complicate life for everyone and prices may be going up as a result and the cost of living issues and so on. Yeah, you may argue milkshakes perhaps shouldn't be encouraged, but they're not going to raise very much money. So if I believe the latest calculations for that, we may, from 2027, when that might become applicable, be able to raise something like £100 million a year. That doesn't do an awful lot for the 20 billion gap, which now seems to be there. Less than the 30 billion, of course, but if it's 20 billion, 100 million won't really do an awful lot and might irritate loads of people.
And of course, what we saw, Vicky Price, when a similar drinks levy was introduced on the soft drinks business, is that they simply changed their formulas. They simply cut the amount of sugar that goes into their drinks to dodge the tax and pack them instead full of artificial sweeteners. Hardly a kind of health boost for the nation, is it?
No, that is a problem. And I think a lot of the taxes that are being discussed right now to replace what was going to be, we thought, the increase in income tax, are going to change behaviour as well. And you're quite right. It could change behaviour by producers or those who provide the services. So, for example, if you have an extra tax or you extend national insurance contributions to rents, which at present don't exist, they don't apply, then you might actually find that there are few people prepared to have houses available or flats available for rent. So other things happen in the economy and you may not be able to raise the amount of money you need, or you may have to pay an awful lot more for housing support. So the issue with all the myriad of taxes which are now being discussed, which are worrying the public generally, and we can't quite estimate, where they might hit, may well not raise the amount of tax that is needed. So yes, perhaps we're not going to have the increase in income tax, but in a year's time we might find that whatever had been anticipated would be coming into the exchequer may simply not be coming, and we may be in exactly the same position again, trying to figure out what may need to be raised in order to make sure that the fiscal side is on balance.
Vicky Price, it's the same with alcohol taxation, isn't it? You ever wondered why beer is getting weaker and more insipid? It's because the alcohol level, the duty, is taxed by the band. So once great beers that were 5% are now 4 point something. The other day, I was charged £8.40 for a pint of lager at Victoria Station. I mean, don't get me wrong, I drank it, but I always choked on it. And when I asked the guy why, he said because it's 5.4%. It gets hammered by taxation. And so my point is this. Manufacturers simply change formulas to dodge tax. That's why so much wine now is 11%. Before that wouldn't even counted in most people's eyes as a wine. Manufacturers get nimble, they water products down, but they don't water the price down. And the loser is always the consumer.
That is true, but of course you could argue that we become slightly healthier as a result. Not everyone can afford to pay £8 for a pint. In fact, I saw an article, I really think it's extraordinary that everyone is getting so excited. How high can a pint of beer be in price and still, allow us to live a normal life? So loads and loads of comments on this. I think people are taking the beer price to heart, and I think you've got an absolute point. But at least, yes, we smoke less, and we drink less, possibly. A lot of non-alcoholic beer is being drunk. But, of course, prices are going up anyway in all sorts of areas. So it's not as if, suddenly the cost of living, because all that has been taken out, has been reduced at all. Quite the opposite is what we see, because we've got everything else. We've got the national insurance contributions increase, the cost of producing anything, the electricity prices, all that, which is, of course, adding to inflation. We are, though, going to get some inflation data later this week, and we're just keeping fingers crossed that they're not going to be that bad.
OK, thank you. Thank you, Vicky Price, there, for joining us on the show. Always an absolute pleasure to have your company. Just want to continue this conversation with you, the viewers at home, before I go. Now, the people that get hammered by all of this are the poorest, the working classes. Now, they can't afford a Ponzi, healthy alternative. They carry on buying the stuff and they get disproportionately taxed the hardest. And that's the thing. Middle-class people can just buy their way around it. It's the working classes that get hammered. Now, coming up next, 6 police officers arrested Maxie and Rosalind Allen early this year for WhatsApp comments made about their daughter's primary school. We'll find out what happened to them next. But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, and here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
After Storm Claudia, conditions will be improving across Portugal and Spain, rain clearing to sunshine, though we are expecting still some showers across parts of the Mediterranean. Nevertheless, on Tuesday across Portugal and Spain there will be plenty of sunshine, but as we drift our way eastwards we are expecting some heavy showers, if not some thunderstorms, across parts of Italy, the Adriatic coastline and also parts of Greece. Still plenty of showers as we head into next week, in between some brighter interludes, but feeling a lot cooler than of late.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Some schools are banning birthday cakes from the classroom.
Yeah, banning parents from sports. And now the great headline in the Telegraph, Labour puts the knife into nursery birthday cake. Apparently, new guidelines for the Department of Education are saying that you should not send your child into school with a cake when it's their birthday, because it's bad for them, it's going to make them fat, all the rest of this stuff. It's the nanny state once again on the march, isn't it?
Is this a new thing? Because I don't remember ever taking a birthday cake.
Oh, yeah, we
on my
did.
birthday.
Yeah, we did too.
Took a birthday cake.
And I think some schools I've seen that have a fake birthday cake, which is not nearly as nice, with a fake cake with a candle on, so you sing happy birthday and blow out the candle. But, you know, I love the way Jacob Rees-Mogg...
oh, yes.
European GB News presenter has waded into this row saying, well, my children's nanny sends little cakes into school for all the children.
Absolutely.
He said
the nanny sends them
nanny sends them in. Only
socialists
socialists
know what is acceptable and what isn't.
He says only socialists want to stop such innocent pleasures. And I think there's a real point about that. One school, actually, Broxburn Primary in Harrow, is saying, don't send your child in with a cake. Donate a book to the school library instead. I mean, that is just not a good substitute, is it?
Cakes?
No, my kids are 1 and 3, so they're not quite at that age yet. But
it'll happen.
It does it. But there, I mean, it should, because
there is. It doesn't have to be a big splodgy cake. It can just be something.
But even if it's a bit of a treat, there's no way the calories of school birthday cake are the calories making people fat.
No.
So we should focus on the big issues rather than ruining this fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not a killjoy. I think kids should have a bit of fun. I just didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah,
it's all changed since my day.
I think maybe it's the teachers who don't like the sugar rush the kids get afterwards, then they can't keep control in the classroom.
GB News, the People's Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Welcome back. Time is 3:49. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, a couple from Hertfordshire arrested for comments on a school WhatsApp group. Well, they say that police have paid them £20,000 in damages. 6 police officers arrested Maxie and Rosalind Allen earlier this year for WhatsApp comments made about their daughter's primary school. Now, Rosalind Levine and Maxie Allen say that they were held for 11 hours and accused the police force of policing free speech. Well, another day in Keir Starmer's wonderful free speech nation. To discuss that, I'm joined in the studio by the External Affairs Officer at the Free Speech Union and GB News contributor Connie Shaw. Connie, welcome to the studio. Always a pleasure to have your company. Here we go again. The police really should be solving real crimes, burglaries, robberies, car theft and the like. Instead, now they're getting their snout stuck into WhatsApp groups.
Yeah, so obviously, of course, it's great that Maxie and Rosalind have received their £20,000 in compensation. But if you cast your mind back to January earlier this year, as you just said, 6 police officers, and this whole thing was captured on a Ring doorbell, 6 police officers, 3 vans, turn up to their house, seize their devices, arrest them, take them to the police station, take their DNA, their fingerprints, mug shots, and they were told that they were being arrested on suspicion of harassment, causing a nuisance and malicious communications. And they were detained for, like they say, over 11 hours. Rosalind says how when she was interviewed for the first time, she asked, "What's the evidence?" And they said, "Well, we're still looking through it because we're not really sure yet." So they didn't actually have the evidence to produce in front of them the first time they were arrested like that. And the way that Maxie and Rosalind describe it, it was as though the police were behaving as though there was a terrorist cell operating in their house. And the investigation went on for 5 weeks until the police said that they were dropping the investigation because they, guess what, found no evidence. And this all came about because in 2024, there was a change in the way that the primary school of their daughter, the way that the school was being led was changed. And Maxie was emailing the governors because they were concerned. And they were first warned that they needed to stop emailing because they were emailing too much. And then they were talking about this on a parents' WhatsApp group. They'd also been told that because they were contacting the school so much, that they needed, that a police officer warned them first in 2024 that maybe they should take their daughter out of school because the school had told them that they weren't allowed to call the school, they couldn't go onto school grounds. Their daughter has epilepsy, so it's important that they have access to the school. And so then they were only allowed to email, but then the school told them that they couldn't email. And then 6 months later, they had a proper police raid on their house. Obviously, the investigation was dropped and the Free Speech Union funded them to sue Hertfordshire Police for wrongful arrest, and this is their payout. This is the second time this year the Free Speech Union has secured a £20,000 payout. The first one was Julian Fox earlier this year when he was arrested for similar things posting online.
So the father, Maxie Allen, he's joining me tonight. If you're tuning in to Farage, 7 till 8 p.m, he'll join me to tell his astonishing story. But I put it to you once again that the state of the nation now, Connie, is people can't get hold of a copper. You know, for a bona fide reason, you know, for a street robbery, theft, a pitiful amount of actual crimes are solved. How many times are we going to have this conversation before the police stop policing tweets or WhatsApps and start policing the streets?
Well, every time something like this happens, we say, surely this must be the last time. But one of the Daily Mail has just done a really brilliant investigation into which areas of the country are most zealously policed by police who want to crack down on free speech. And the most zealous area is Cumbria Police. That's at a rate of 42.5 per 100,000. So that's 217 arrests. That's 20 times higher than Staffordshire, which is only 2.1% per 100,000. So, but even in the lowest area, so this was in 2024, one of our big public cases this year was Robert Moss from Staffordshire. So even in the lowest area, you are still at risk of having your house raided. Robert Moss, he had his house raided after he criticised his former employer, and we're helping him as well. So it's a postcode lottery, but you're not safe anywhere. OK,
Connie Shaw, thank you for joining us. Another crazy world in free speech Britain. External Affairs Officer at the Free Speech Union. Now, the Hertfordshire Police and Crime Commissioner have told GB News this. There has clearly been a fundamental breakdown in relationships between a school and parents that shouldn't have become a police matter. I think we can all agree with that. Now, coming up next, we'll continue our build-up to the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's so-called sweeping new asylum and deportation reform statement. We'll be live from the Commons. When that happens, you're with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of today, it will stay dry for many of us, but in the north and east we will see a few showers. Some of these falling as snow across the far north of Scotland, where there is a risk of ice overnight. And we will see that wetter, sleetier weather become a little bit more widespread across parts of Scotland and northern England through Tuesday. But through tonight, we'll continue to see showers across the far north of Scotland, so we could see some ice on the roads. Elsewhere, it will turn quite chilly overnight with clear skies, particularly across eastern areas. So we're expecting a widespread rural frost by tomorrow morning. But across western areas, Northern Ireland in particular, a blanket of cloud will keep temperatures a little bit above zero. But we'll start to see this rain falling as sleet and snow, particularly over the high ground of parts of central, southern Scotland, parts of the Pennines as well. The highest parts of the Pennines could see some sleety accumulations as well. Quite a lot of cloud around across more central, southern areas of England as well. But it's further north and west where we'll see a much wetter start to the day, and it's going to feel quite wintry. As I said, we do have warnings in force throughout Tuesday, all the way through until Thursday, in fact, for wintry hazards such as snow and ice. It's the first spell of winter, so do take care if you're travelling over the next few days, particularly in the evenings and early mornings. And we will see some more widespread rain spread across more northern areas throughout Tuesday. That will push into the far south and east by the end of the day, but it should remain fairly dry and bright for a lot of the day across the far southeast. Temperatures across the southeast 9 or 10 degrees, a little bit warmer than elsewhere. We've got a very brisk northerly wind bringing quite a chilly feel. Now, the snow warnings continue across parts of Scotland through Tuesday evening. We'll start to see some accumulations above around 150 metres, and it's going to get even colder as we head to Wednesday and Thursday. That's when we're expecting the coldest part of the week, with further snow for many northern areas.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for our more than 2 million YouTube subscribers and more than 2 billion views. That is Britain watching, sharing and making its voice heard louder than ever before.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. A road traffic collision in North Yorkshire on the A168 southbound has resulted in a lane closure, impacting travel in the area. In Salford, motorists on the M60 clockwise are experiencing delays due to congestion, with traffic expected to return to normal around 4:30 p.m. Meanwhile, in Warwickshire, 2 lanes are closed on the M42 northbound following a collision, leading to hour-long delays expected until 7:30 p.m. On the rail network, Chiltern Railways is reporting service delays between High Wycombe and West Ruislip, and East Midlands Railway is facing disruptions affecting travel through Warrington Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you could win your Christmas this year paid for by us. First, we'll give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you a further £10,000 cash to spend on all your Christmas presents, even the tree. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with £1,000 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good afternoon to you and a happy Monday. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you as ever, live across the UK, all the very latest news, debates and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. And here's what's coming up on today's action-packed show.
Will announce the most significant changes to our asylum system in modern times.
The Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is today set to unveil Labour's tough, uncompromising Danish-style asylum and immigration crackdown, and she's pledging to unite a divided country. But with lawyers, MPs and the ECHR threatening to derail the plan, we'll ask if it's doomed to fail. And first, they taxed our Cornish pasties. Then they came for our fizzy pop. And now Rachel Reeves is proposing a milkshake tax. This so-called fun tax could net the Treasury up to £100 million a year. But will it be the final straw for our embattled British dairy farming industry? And Keir Starmer is expected to tell Donald Trump that the BBC must get its house in order after the US president vows to go ahead with a lawsuit of up to $5 billion against the embattled broadcaster. We'll debate whether the Prime Minister could stop that lawsuit. And meanwhile, fly tippers have dumped hundreds of tons of waste stacked 10 metres high in a field in Oxfordshire, and the removal cost is now thought to be greater than the entire annual budget of the local district council. We'll speak to a furious environmentalist, and that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Like the Conservatives before them, this Labour government will surely be sunk if it cannot get a grip on illegal immigration. Rishi Sunak couldn't stop the boats. So far, Sir Keir Starmer hasn't smashed the gangs. Is adopting a Danish-style tough immigration system the way out of this quandary for the Labour Party, or is it doomed to fail already? A substantial backbench rumble potentially turning into rebellion is happening. Will the same lawyers, will the same lefties, the same lovies derail their plan as happened with Rwanda? We're expecting Shabana Mahmood to deliver a statement in Commons during today's show. In advance of that, I'm joined by a Labour MP for Hales Owen in the studio to ask him, is this enough to stop Labour's ship sinking? Get in touch, gbnews.com/you'll say. First, it's time for your headlines, and here's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. The headlines at 4:02. The Prime Minister has called the case for reforming the UK's asylum system devastatingly simple, as sweeping changes have now been published ahead of the Home Secretary speaking in the Commons this afternoon. Under the plans, asylum seekers will be returned home once their country is deemed safe, and most will face a 20-year wait before applying for permanent settlement. Deportations will also be sped up when claims are rejected, with a new drive to cut multiple appeals and close off routes that ministers say are being used to delay removals. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is also threatening visa bans on 3 African countries if they fail to cooperate on taking back illegal migrants. Sir Keir Starmer said the country needs a stronger deterrent effect and rules that are robustly enforced. But the overhaul is already proving divisive. Several Labour MPs have publicly criticised the changes. Backbencher Stella Creasy labelled the reforms performatively cruel, while leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, says her party will lend support to Labour.
We do welcome the government's announcements. It is nowhere near enough. We're going to work with them to try and get this through. Because what I know is that a lot of Labour backbenchers hate this stuff. We've already had about 10 of them come out to criticise their own government. They're going to need us if this is actually going to work. But the truth is, it doesn't go far enough. Unless we leave the ECHR, I suspect Shabana Mahmood is going to run into the same legal problems that the Conservative government ran into.
Elsewhere today, the chairman of the BBC has told staff there is no basis for a defamation case after Donald Trump announced plans to sue the corporation for up to $5 billion over an edited panorama clip. In an internal email, Samir Shah said the BBC is determined to fight and is mindful of its duty to protect licence fee payers amid speculation over potential legal costs. It follows President Trump's accusation that the broadcaster cheated by altering his January the 6th speech, despite the BBC already apologising for what it called an error of judgment in the edit. The fallout has already led to the resignations of Director General Tim Davie and the news chief Deborah Turness, with the panorama episode permanently withdrawn from broadcast. Birmingham bin strikes could continue beyond May's local elections unless a deal is reached, Unite the Union has warned. Today, workers overwhelmingly voted to extend their strike action, as those who are directly employed by Birmingham City Council are now set to be joined on the picket lines by agency workers from the 1st of December. Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham called the move by agency workers a real escalation in the dispute. A couple in Hertfordshire say police have paid them damages after they were arrested in January for comments made in a parents' WhatsApp group about their daughter's primary school. Rosalind Levine and Maxie Allen were held for 11 hours after officers said they needed to investigate claims of harassment and malicious communications. No changes were brought, and the couple now say they're very unhappy with the force, arguing that people under investigation are often given almost no information about why they're being targeted. They warn cases like theirs make it look like police are policing free speech when investigations collapse. Bangladesh's former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been sentenced to death. She's been found guilty of ordering last year's crackdown on student protests, where the UN says up to 1,400 people were killed. Hasina, tried while in exile in India, has called the verdict biased and politically motivated. The ruling puts pressure on New Delhi to extradite her, though that remains unlikely. Security is now tightening across Bangladesh as protests are starting to erupt over the verdict. And a cold weather warning is in effect, with snow and ice expected as temperatures plunge. The UK Health Security Agency has issued the alert for the East and West Midlands, the North East, North West and Yorkshire, running through to next week. It follows the coldest night since March over the weekend, when temperatures dropped to -7 in the Scottish Highlands. Officials say the freezing conditions could pose risks for vulnerable people, urging the public to check on those who may need support. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3164 and €1.1364. The price of gold is £3,090.65 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 9,690 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Now, returning to our top story now, and that is this. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is today set to introduce some of its toughest measures yet on illegal migration, with countries that refuse to take back failed asylum seekers or foreign criminals, well, they're to face a total visa ban. But could the ECHR, members of Parliament, backbenchers for the Labour Party, the usual lords, lawyers and lovies, help to derail the plans in exactly the same way they sunk Rishi Sunak's Rwanda plan? Well, I'm joined in the studio by GB News' political correspondent Olivia Utley and the Labour Member of Parliament for Hales Owen, and that's Alex Ballinger. Welcome to you both. Olivia, let's start with you. We're anticipating Shabana Mahmood to address the Commons some point this afternoon. I've got to say, a bit of a grumble on my behalf. 3 urgent questions getting in the way. What's so urgent that it can't wait for this huge announcement of historic importance? I digress. But just in these past few months, Olivia, you've announced it has now been published online. Has anything new leapt out to you?
Well, we've obviously been briefed quite a lot in advance, but there are some really interesting details in this document which has just been published. One is that at the moment, migrants who have no right to be in the UK are offered £3,000 to return voluntarily to their own country. Under these plans, that sum would go up. Now, I expect that will go down pretty badly with viewers at home, but it should be noted that under the Danish system, which this new policy is supposed to be emulating, people who have no right to stay in Denmark are offered tens of thousands of pounds to go back to their home country, and it is working really well. That is one part of the package which is working really well in Denmark. Since 2015, illegal immigration numbers are down 90%. Another really interesting detail that stood out to me in this document is that under the new proposals, families will be prioritised for deportation. At the moment, there is this bizarre incentive system whereby if you come by yourself to the UK illegally, there is a relatively high chance that you will end up being deported. If you come and then send your children over the channel in a dinghy, then you are considered a family and you're at the bottom of the deportation queue. Obviously, that is a really perverse incentive because it means that more and more children are crossing the channel in very dangerous rubber dinghies. So those are the two things that jumped out to me from this policy proposal. Neither of those, I mean, I think on the whole, those will go down pretty well with voters, but doesn't seem to have quelled any of the anger among left-wing Labour backbenchers. 17 of them have already spoken out in really tough language, people talking about disgust, people talking about moral ineptitude of the new policies. So it'd be really, really interesting to see whether Shabana Mahmood can get Labour MPs behind this. I'm sure Alex will be able to tell us a lot more.
Well, let's bring Alex Bellinger in now. Hales Owen, Labour Party MP. Let's start, if we could, just on that backbench rebellion, potentially. Stella Creasy, Walthamstow, calling this performative cruelty. Simon Ofer, that's the MP for Stroud, saying Labour must push back on racist agendas like reforms rather than echo it. Brian Leasham, that's the MP for Alloa and Grangemouth. There was a real degree of disgust at some of these proposals, but an interesting point. All of these MPs are set to lose their seats in all the polls I've seen recently, either to the Greens, so perhaps they're performing to that gallery, or to Reform. Quite what they're thinking, I don't know. But let's get your take here, Alex. We're anticipating a huge raft of announcements. Will that raft be enough to stop the Labour Party sinking?
Well, I think we were all elected on a manifesto commitment to take control of our borders and tackle this small boats crisis. So I'm really pleased that the Home Secretary is announcing this big raft of changes. When I knock on doors in Hales Owen, as I guess many of my parliamentary colleagues do, cost of living is very important, but up there is small boats and illegal immigration. And I think it's really important that the Labour Party takes action on this. And I think that is the view that would be shared amongst an overwhelming majority of Labour Party MPs at the moment. There are always going to be people that disagree with particular policies. That's Parliament. We are discussing these things all the time. That's why we have debates. But I don't foresee any challenges about this one getting through.
But we are in a situation now where Sir Keir Starmer is the least popular Prime Minister since records began. Rachel Reeves is the least popular Chancellor since records began. The party needs desperately a lifeline. It probably won't come in the budget on the 26th. It desperately needs to tackle illegal immigration. And I put it to you again, irrespective of party politics, and I think a great many of our viewers watching the show will support a huge amount of the pledges you're putting forward. Will they be allowed to come to fruition? Will the same miscreants, the ECHR, the human rights lawyers, the activists, the NGOs, dare I say at the House of Lords, will they sink your plan as they sank Rwanda?
No, of course not. And I think there are a really strong raft of measures here that the Home Secretary is putting forward. A lot of them, as you were saying before, emulating the Danish model. Now, of course, Denmark is in the ECHR. They've reached a 40-year low of asylum applications after they announced this pledge. And if they're able to do it with a social democratic government, with a left-wing government in Denmark, there is no reason that we can't do it in the UK. And there is some pretty strong tough in here, Martin. So there is a complete change to the appeals process to make it more difficult for people to appeal, to block themselves leaving the country. There are tough new rules around people coming to this country with assets. and those assets should be used to pay for their accommodation if they have access to a vehicle.
That's been very heavily criticised as bordering on the kind of things that were done to the Jews in the 1930s from those on the left.
I think if people come here and they have a bank account, if they are receiving remittances from their family overseas, if they're able to drive an Audi, and we've seen examples of that, people staying in asylum hotels and they're driving these vehicles, I think the public would recognise that those sort of people should make a contribution to their accommodation as a point of fairness. It's very different to the example that you gave there.
Can I probe you on your visa ban list? Angola, Namibia, the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's chicken feed. It's pointless. A total of 6,100 visas were issued to all of those nations combined last year, 0.2% of total visas, and 70% of them were tourist visas. Why aren't you tackling the real problem? Go after the Pakistanis, the Afghanis, the Eritreans that overstay in their tens of thousands and are much more likely to commit crime. You haven't got the bottle to tackle the real nations. You're going after the small fry.
So these three countries are three countries that have consistently refused to engage with the UK on a returns agreement. They've consistently refused to engage. And I think it's a good test case for us. So the Home Secretary has said these are the first three countries, a part of a process, and there may be some other larger offenders coming further down the line. And if we can put these visa restrictions in, if we can put these diplomatic sanctions on a way and influence these countries, this is something that I think can be rolled out across other places.
But isn't it, a strong nation, for example, would say to Pakistan, who still won't take back any of their rape gang participants, instead the Labour Party has negotiated to allow them to fly directly into the UK. No one's gone back yet who's taken part in these rape gangs. Surely we should talk tough with those sort of nations. We pay them millions of pounds in foreign aid. And it was like £114 million in foreign aid to Pakistan last year. They're the biggest overstayers. They have bringing the most number of people on family visas. They're the worst offenders. Why aren't we tackling nations like that?
And the Home Secretary has said she will. So these are just the first steps. As with any new policy, you need to test it out. And I think testing it out with three countries that are offenders, that are problems, but are maybe not ones we have like these long-term, large relationships with, is a sensible way of doing it. And if we are able to get these returns agreements with Namibia, with DRC and with Angola, we can show that we're a country that isn't afraid to take measures, a country that is not accepting of this sort of action. And I think that's a strong message to take to those other countries that you just mentioned.
Olivia, we'd like to fire away a question.
Do you think there'll be any ramifications for Labour MPs who are speaking up so vociferously against this policy, which is surely a cornerstone of Labour's immigration policy?
So I think some of the people that are speaking up are those who you might expect to speak up against lots of things that a centrist Labour government is doing at the moment. And parliamentary debate is a part of our process. We are supposed to debate these issues. We are supposed to discuss them. There are disagreements on almost everything that we do. So I hope there are no consequences, but I do think there are no surprises about the people that have come forward.
Alex, what do you say to people who say this doesn't go far enough? We're already up to our necks in illegal immigration. We're already seeing a huge shift in the fabric of the nation. No doubt your constituents tell you that in Hale's Own. The only real way to tackle that is mass deportations.
Well, that's clearly a step too far. And I think people that have come here legally, that have an expectation to stay in this country, and the public doesn't think I would expect that it would be fair to deport people in that situation.
Well, can I just put to you something we did with JL Partners last week exclusively? 64% of your voters, Labour voters, support the mass deportation of illegal immigrants. I put it to you, you're out of touch with your voters.
Well, I haven't seen that polling. And I think if people are found to have come here illegally and their asylum claims are not valid, they should be deported. And we have deported 50,000 people so far. 5,000 of those, more than 5,000, are foreign national offenders. So the government is taking action. I think the line would be drawn, and what some parties have called for, is deporting everyone that came under the Boris wave, earlier in the 2020s, people that have come here legally, people that have come here to work for the NHS. I think any proposals to deport those sort of people are completely wrong, and that should be differentiated from what the Labour Party is doing at the moment.
I guess the big question is this. Will this be enough to shift the dial, or will it be seen as more tough talk and little action?
Well, time will tell. of course. It has been successful in Denmark. I think there is a strong role for us to look at where countries have done this sort of work in the past and where it has succeeded. And if it does succeed, and I think it has to succeed, the people on the doorstep in Helzoen are saying that we need to get a grip of illegal immigration, then we'll be in a very strong position to make the case for the other things that the Labour Party is doing, what we're doing on the NHS, what we're doing around education and what we're doing at the cost of living. So I've got a very strong feeling about this.
But you do accept here on GB News today, if you don't solve this problem, you'll be sunk like the Tories were before you.
I think it's a problem that we absolutely have to solve, Martin, and that is why the Home Secretary is taking this very strong action today.
Alex Badger, thank you so much, MP for Hales and for the Labour Party. Pleasure to have your company in the studio here today. And also thank you to you, Olivia Utley. We're expecting that full statement later on in the show from Shabana Mahmood from the Commons. Don't go anywhere. But before that, it's time for the Great British Giveaway now. And here's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to enjoy Christmas on us at GB News this year. That's right, 40 grand in tax-free cash, shopping vouchers and a GB News festive goodie bag. That's the best bit. Here's the details you need to enter.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year with your chance to win everything you need to celebrate the festivities. There's £30,000 in tax-free cash to make 2026 the best year yet. A further £10,000 cash to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £1,000 to spend in your favourite supermarket. Christmas lunch is on us. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag, and we'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing the 8th of December. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come on today's show, we'll continue our build-up to the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's so-called sweeping new asylum and deportation reforms. And next, Keir Starmer is expected to tell Donald Trump that the BBC must get its house in order after the US president vowed to go ahead with a lawsuit of up to $5 billion against the broadcaster. We get all the very latest from the States. This is GB News, and we're Britain's #1 news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News.
Britain's News Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 4:24. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the BBC chairman says they are determined to fight any Donald Trump legal action. As the broadcaster said, there is no basis for a defamation case after Donald Trump said he would sue the corporation for between $1 and $5 billion. But should he heed legal warning, it could be a challenging case to win. Well, let's now speak with GB News presenter Ben Leo, who is live in Washington, D.C. Ben, welcome to the show. All talk, of course, about this telephone call. Donald Trump expecting to say to Keir Starmer, get your shopping order on the BBC, and also huge revelations about the Jeffrey Epstein files. Let's start with the BBC, Ben. What's the latest?
The latest is that President Trump was meant to be in conversation with Keir Starmer over the weekend. I think he was waiting for a call with the Prime Minister. We thought it may come on Saturday night. It didn't come. We thought it may have come last night. We understand that it still hadn't come. President Trump was busy at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach over the weekend, enjoying some sunshine and playing golf after what has been a pretty hectic couple of weeks. So maybe he was just too busy playing golf. Maybe the Prime Minister was too busy doing whatever he's been doing over the weekend. But the call hasn't been made yet, as we understand. So maybe it will come today. To be honest, I don't think the call will make much difference. Maybe the Prime Minister will apologise on behalf of the BBC, in addition to the apology the chairman of the Beeb, Samir Shah, has already sent to the White House. But the BBC are quite determined to see President Trump in court because they believe, although they've admitted making a mistake, an error, as they described it with the Panorama incident, they've said that they don't believe they materially damaged him through defamation because they argue, more than anything, that President Trump, 1 week after that Panorama documentary aired, went on to win the election. So the BBC is saying, well, hang on a minute, how did we damage you? You went on to win the election in a stomping majority in the Electoral College and the popular vote as well. So that's their argument. President Trump, as you saw with Bev's great interview on Friday on the Late Show Live on GB News, he is determined to see the BBC in court. He was throwing around figures of between $1 to $5 billion. And we understand that if it does reach court, then any fee that will be paid, any settlement, any court costs, would probably most likely come from the BBC's insurer as opposed to licence fee payers. And there has been some rhetoric over the weekend that from the board, from BBC execs who have been quoted in the Times, the Sunday Times particularly, saying and stressing that any money that's paid to President Trump should not come from licence fee payers, Martin. Elsewhere, President Trump is back in Washington today, and he called last night after weeks of pressure from Democrats, from even people on his own side in the Republican Party, the likes of MAGA firebrand Marjorie Taylor Greene, who have been demanding the release of the so-called Epstein files. Well, President Trump last night dropped an absolute bombshell on Truth Social, saying, yeah, OK, Democrats, OK, you bunch of hoaxers, as he describes, let's release the Epstein files. There's a massive vote in Congress coming tomorrow, Tuesday, and President Trump said to his Republican Party colleagues, I want you all to vote for the release of the Epstein files. Let's get it out in the open, and you'll see that there's nothing to answer for when it comes to me and my involvement in Jeffrey Epstein. So it's going to be a massive day tomorrow in Washington, D.C., Martin, and yeah, the release of those files will come imminently after that vote.
And I wonder, Ben...
obviously, Nigel was really keen for me to go with him to America to give evidence on this. And as far as I'm aware, it was vetoed straight from the top. I mean, the original plan at the time was to go straight to David Lammy. I don't know the ins and outs of what was said and what happened. I just know that I got an answer back of, it's a hard no.
So you don't know who stopped it in the UK? I mean, was it David Lammy, potentially?
Possibly, but that again, that's I think. I don't know. I do know that they did go straight to the top. They bypassed probation and went, to the government. And yeah, it came back as absolutely not.
Martin, there was, the clip there you just saw was of Lucy Connolly, of course, who was imprisoned for, well, at least given a 2.5-year prison sentence for that infamous Southport tweet last year. That clip, which we played a little bit early, so apologies about that, was her on the Late Show Live last night. I spoke to her off the back of reports that the White House was going to be offering refugee status, asylum seeker status to Brits, to Britons who had been politically persecuted, i.e. for free speech, for outspoken views on immigration or even the transgender debate. I spoke to Lucy Connolly about that, but the conversation morphed into this, again, I love the word, but it's true, an absolute bombshell from Lucy Connolly, who revealed that some months ago, when Nigel Farage came to Washington, D.C. to give Congress evidence on free speech in the UK, Mr Farage wanted Lucy Connolly to come with her. But because of her probation licence conditions, she's unable to travel abroad. The US government here, this side of the pond, the Trump administration, directly contacted the Labour government in the UK and said, guys, Lucy Connolly would be very much appreciated in Congress to give evidence on free speech. It wasn't a holiday, it wasn't a jaunt, she wasn't going to Disneyland or Universal Studios in Florida. It was for a few days to give evidence in Congress in front of lawmakers. Somebody from the Trump administration contacted Labour and said, please, on this one occasion, can we bypass these probation conditions? We'll send her back and then you can deal with it from there. They said no. The request went right to the top, as Lucy said, of the Labour government. She's not sure who the Trump administration spoke to. I said, was it David Lammy? Was it Sir Keir Starmer? Or potentially, most likely, Lord Hermer, the Attorney General. But Lucy Connolly was denied permission by the government to travel to the US. And it just gets you thinking, doesn't it, after a prison sentence off the back of a very silly, by her own admission, tweet, a tweet that she regrets, is she now still being essentially kept prisoner by the UK government, especially when it comes to the fact that she was requested to come to the US by the Trump administration, Martin?
It's an astonishing set of circumstances. Jailed for a social media post and then gagged by the Labour Party, not allowed to talk in Congress. Ben, before I go, can I ask you, do you think the Democrats might have bitten off more than they can chew with this rush to get the Epstein files out? It could implicate other people, for example, Bill Clinton.
Well, yes, of course, it is a fact that Bill Clinton travelled on Jeffrey Epstein's jet. I think it's 5, 6 or maybe 7 times, perhaps, is the figure. He was on the island, on his weird little island in the Virgin Islands at some points. And there was also an infamous portrait of Bill Clinton in a blue dress wearing red heels. Some say it's meant to be him dressed as Monica Lewinsky. That portrait was hanging in Epstein's creepy little mansion on his island. So nobody knows what Bill Clinton's, or at least the extent of what Bill Clinton's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein was. But President Trump is saying, OK, guys, you want to release these Epstein files? Let's do it. A, you'll see that I had absolutely nothing to do with Epstein. The fact of the matter is I banned him from my club before anybody knew what a weirdo he was. Secondly, let's look at the likes of Bill Clinton. Why did he travel on his jet so many times? What was he doing on Epstein Island? Why was there a portrait of Clinton in a blue dress wearing red heels in Epstein's house? So President Trump is going all guns blazing. And I think the reluctance, what I'm hearing on the street here in DC, the reluctance from President Trump to have these files released previously is because, not that it implicates him necessarily, but because there will be names in there, maybe donors to the president, maybe some people in and around the White House over recent years, who not necessarily got involved in Epstein's strange shenanigans with underage children, but maybe they had some business relationships with him. Maybe they met him for some charity work or et cetera, et cetera. And those names, because of that very premise, will be in those files. So although they've not done anything untoward, they'll still be sort of dragged through the mud regardless.
Well, Ben Leo, never a quiet day in DC. Thank you so much for bringing us up to speed. And, of course, Late Show Live with Ben Leo and Bev Turner. Midnight on GB News exclusively. Ben Leo, thanks for joining us live from DC. Always an absolute pleasure. Now, lots more still to come between now and 5 p.m, including a continued build-up to the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's so-called sweeping new asylum and deportation reforms, only here on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of today, it will stay dry for many of us, but in the north and east we will see a few showers. Some of these falling as snow across the far north of Scotland, where there is a risk of ice overnight. And we will see that wetter, sleetier weather become a little bit more widespread across parts of Scotland and northern England through Tuesday. But through tonight, we'll continue to see showers across the far north of Scotland, so we could see some ice on the roads. Elsewhere, it will turn quite chilly overnight with clear skies, particularly across eastern areas. So we're expecting a widespread rural frost by tomorrow morning. But across western areas, Northern Ireland in particular, a blanket of cloud will keep temperatures a little bit above zero. But we'll start to see this rain falling as sleet and snow, particularly over the high ground of parts of central, southern Scotland, parts of the Pennines as well. The highest parts of the Pennines could see some sleety accumulations as well. Quite a lot of cloud around across more central, southern areas of England as well. But it's further north and west where we'll see a much wetter start to the day, and it's going to feel quite wintry. As I said, we do have warnings in force throughout Tuesday, all the way through until Thursday, in fact, for wintry hazards such as snow and ice. It's the first spell of winter, so do take care if you're travelling over the next few days, particularly in the evenings and early mornings. And we will see some more widespread rain spread across more northern areas throughout Tuesday. That will push into the far south and east by the end of the day, but it should remain fairly dry and bright for a lot of the day across the far southeast. Temperatures across the southeast 9 or 10 degrees, a little bit warmer than elsewhere. We've got a very brisk northerly wind bringing quite a chilly feel. Now, the snow warnings continue across parts of Scotland through Tuesday evening. We'll start to see some accumulations above around 150 metres, and it's going to get even colder as we head to Wednesday and Thursday. That's when we're expecting the coldest part of the week, with further snow for many northern areas.
Thank you, Britain, for sharing over 5 million comments on your say, because when you talk, we listen.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Road users may face congestion on the A4232 northbound between St Fagans and junction 33 of the M4 at Capel Lanilturn. In Leicestershire, a collision on the M1 northbound between junctions 21A and 22 has closed 2 lanes. The M40 northbound in Oxfordshire has a lane blocked between junctions 6 and 8A due to an incident. The A30 in Devon faces 10-minute delays westbound due to a crash. And on the trains, East Midlands railway services through Warrington Central are disrupted, and Great Western Railway is replacing trains with road transport between Exeter St David's and Barnstaple. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:37. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, returning now to our top story today. That's the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is set to introduce some of its toughest measures yet on illegal migration, with countries that refuse to take back failed asylum seekers or foreign criminals to face a total visa ban. But could the ECHR, backbench MPs, Lords, the media, lovies, the usual lot, the human rights lawyers, derail the plans exactly as they did to the Conservatives with their Rwanda plan? Well, I'm joined in the studio, delighted to say, in Westminster, by the founder of the Sanctuary Foundation, Dr. Krish Kandiah. Krish, a pleasure to have your company, especially in person today. Are you of the mindset that this is surprising coming from the Labour Party? And to many people, this sounds like the words of Nigel Farage.
They do sound a lot like the words of Nigel Farage. I wonder if his team are jubilant that they've kind of won the argument. I mean, I've worked side by side with many Labour MPs to contend for the rights of Syrian refugees when Alan Kurdi washed up on that beach in Bodrum in 2015, and the world responded with compassion and kindness. But the Overton window seems to have shifted. Public opinion now is really so focused, particularly on asylum seekers. And asylum seekers make up less than 5% of net migration to the UK, and yet all the attention is on these people. Many of them apply for asylum in the UK and are granted it, in fact, the majority. So that means they have a valid case. They're fleeing countries like Afghanistan, Eritrea, Sudan. Sudan is such a terrible situation that satellites are picking up blood on the ground because so many people have been massacred there. And our response should be kindness and compassion. We can't take everybody, but we should take a significant number. The only chink of light I see in this new policy is that the Home Secretary has said that we will start providing safe and legal routes through community sponsorship for people in Sudan. So that's a chink of light. But the rest of it looks pretty dark. I mean, removing people's jewellery, you mentioned earlier, that sounds like something the Nazis were willing to do to Jewish people when they were entering the concentration camps. That isn't the country I recognise, the country of the kinder transport, the country of 250,000 Ukrainians being offered welcome. So I feel like there's a culture shift going on right now.
The Overton window has shifted, you're correct, and that's because the public is being impacted by this in many ways. First of all, there's a huge financial burden. Billions and billions of pounds being spent on asylum, on hotels. People feel that's unfair. Secondly, on crime. You know, we have to understand, we have to accept that the propensity for those from overseas to commit crimes is higher. You mentioned Afghanistan. 22 times more likely to be a sex offender if you're from Afghanistan versus the indigenous British population. A lot of people say that the Overton window has shifted quite rightly because we don't need to be importing cultures that are so provably incompatible with our own. So perhaps the Overton window has shifted, and Krish Kandias, it's you that's in the wrong.
Well, I'm always open to be put right. I want to have humility on that, and definitely open to being put right. Look, I agree with you that spending billions of pounds of money that could have gone into international aid on hotels is a complete waste of money. We should have been helping asylum seekers to be able to get into work. They want to work. Many of them sign up for Deliveroo as soon as they come into the country. They want to contribute. Many of the people would rather not be living in the hotels. And when we say hotels, it's not the kind of place you and I would want to spend an evening. They're overcrowded.
But if we allowed anybody from anywhere in the world to come here and work, we'd be absolutely inundated with immigrants from all over the planet. It's not our job to give people, it's not our job to give people jobs from anywhere on the planet because they don't like it in their own country.
Well, most of the people are coming because they're fleeing war and terror. Top three countries, we said, Afghanistan, Eritrea, Sudan. So they're trying to get away from something terrible.
Well, actually, most asylum applications are Pakistan, Afghanistan, Eritrea, Iran. Pakistan is the top of the list. How about if a government was truly tough on asylum and immigration, rather than picking on these tiny countries who have basically no impact, Angola, Namibia, Democratic Republic of Congo, only 6,100 visas were issued to those three countries in their entirety last year, and 3/4 of them were tourist visas. We should be getting tough on countries like Pakistan.
Well, look, we did get tough on Albania. There is no war in Albania. Albanians are wonderful people. I used to live in the country. And we got tough. We came up with a deal with the Albanian government, and now they were the top number of people coming in, and now they're not. So it is possible to have a returns deal. Maybe we should have a returns deal with Pakistan. There isn't a war going on in Pakistan. There are people that are being persecuted for different faith positions in Pakistan, so maybe we want to be discerning and not have a blanket ban. But look, I think the whole flavour of our discussion seems to be that we're afraid of strangers, that we're afraid of people from other cultures. We're increasingly nervous for our children, nervous for the cultural impact other people coming in as having.
When you see the protests at asylum hotels because of rapes, because of violent crimes on children often, this is happening in working class communities who never had a say, they never had a vote. They've been trampled on by liberal politicians, and actually they have experienced a change in their culture. They want this to stop, and today is a starting point that perhaps you should back.
Look, sex crimes against children are absolutely abhorrent. I'm a foster parent. I've looked after children who've had the worst things happen to them. And the majority of sexual assaults that happen to children aren't performed by foreigners. They happen within families and friendship groups.
Well, that's because we're still a majority white nation, just about. Per capita, proportionally is what I'm talking about. And you have to admit, the facts show that sex offenders are coming proportionally more likely from overseas. And illegal immigration is a huge part of that.
Look, I think anyone who commits a crime against a child or anyone else ought to be punished, for sure. That's no doubt about that. But again, the majority of crimes against children are happening within family groups, by friends and family, and that's awful, and we need to fight that. And if we take our eye off of the 90% or 95% of the problem and focus on the 5%, that's a distraction.
Well, it's a distraction that the Labour Party thinks it needs to address because the electorate are fed up with illegal immigration. A report out last week showed that 66% of the entire population supports deporting all illegal immigrants, and that includes 64% of Labour voters. So the Overton window really has shifted.
I agree. I think in one sense GB News has been incredibly effective. This has been something that you've been speaking about consistently for a long time, and you have helped shape that Overton window. I want to get us back to the time when Britain had moral ambition, compassion and kindness in the world.
And controlled borders.
I don't think those two are mutually exclusive. I believe in both compassion and control. I think we can have control of our borders. I think the way to do that is to break the economic model that's driving people to come here. And it's not about being mean to people when they arrive, but going after the gangs and finding safe and legal routes for people to come here. No one from Ukraine paid £4,000 to cross the ocean in order to come here. They got on a 60 quid flight from Poland because they had a visa. We were able to provide visas to people who had applied for asylum outside of our country. If we had that mechanism, I think that would blow up the whole system.
And they're also from cultures, perhaps, that are much more compatible with our own than the likes of Eritrea, Afghanistan, Iran, and so forth. Anyway, we have to move on.
It's nice to speak to you.
Dr. Krish Kandaya, founder of the Sanctuary Foundation. Thanks for joining us in the studio. It's always a pleasure. Coming up next, fly tippers have dumped hundreds of tons of waste stacked 10 metres high in a field in Oxfordshire. And the removal cost, well, it's greater than the entire annual budget of the local district council. That's next. But meanwhile, if you're in search of some holiday sun, then here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations. Perfect.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
After Storm Claudia, conditions will be improving across Portugal and Spain, rain clearing to sunshine, though we are expecting still some showers across parts of the Mediterranean. Nevertheless, on Tuesday across Portugal and Spain there will be plenty of sunshine, but as we drift our way eastwards we are expecting some heavy showers, if not some thunderstorms, across parts of Italy, the Adriatic coastline and also parts of Greece. Still plenty of showers as we head into next week, in between some brighter interludes, but feeling a lot cooler than of late.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's about this project. What are you doing with it, and what are you hoping to achieve?
Hi, Stephen. Anne, hope you're well.
Hi. Yes.
I'm partnering with Genesis Care, which is a private healthcare company, and basically following their research, which shared that the number one fear of people who get diagnosed with glioblastoma is that they lose their memories. Now, that's obviously affects me because Tom was my brother, and his 2 points in his life was raising awareness to treatments and the power of positivity. Tom's family were called the Positive Parkers, and we were an extension of the Positive Parkers. So Genesis Care have created this campaign called the Memory Bank, which is an art installation that basically you go to. It was in the Westgate Shopping Centre in Cambridge, and now it's in the Genesis Care Centre.
Just here in the UK, it's about 13,000 people are diagnosed with this sort of primary brain tumour, glioblastoma, as you were saying. Did Tom ever say that that was his greatest fear, was losing his memory?
He didn't really. Tom lived in the moment. He never made us feel like he was diagnosed. He was always positive. Even in his worst days, he'd come in with a smile on his face. And what comes to mind is he'd go into an interview like this and say wonderful things about life, like such spiritual, deep messages. And I turn to him and I say, Tom, that was just phenomenal. And he'll say, like, I've no idea what I just said. You know, like.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:49. You with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, a massive fly-tipping scandal is unfolding in rural Oxfordshire, where a 20-foot mountain of plastic foam and wood, stretching the entire length of almost 2 football pitches. You can see it on your screen. They're absolutely grotesque. Well, it's been found to be illegally dumped garbage that was just metres from the River Cherwell, now discovered by anglers and blamed on organised crime. Environmental groups warn it's an environmental catastrophe in plain sight, and they say that every day of inaction risks toxic runoff, poisoning local wildlife. It's an absolute aberration. I'm joined in the studio by the Lawyers for Nature representative, Paul Palzan. Paul, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company. I've got to say, whatever your political background, whatever your leanings, this story has united Britons. It's utter grotesque. It's eco-vandalism. The big question is, who done it? Where's this garbage from, and can they be nicked?
Well, I think the big question, actually, we'll go on to who did it in a second. The big question at the moment is for the Environment Agency to put emergency measures in place to stop any of this rubbish and any of the leachate where rainfall goes through the landfill and into the river. They need to stop that in the next couple of days, and they also need to start work to clear up this landfill within, this dump within weeks rather than years, which is often how long it takes. Then we can look at who did this. Now, this is definitely more than someone taking 50 quid to take someone's building waste and dumping it in a lane. This is not that kind of thing. There's thousands of tonnes, possibly around 9,000 tonnes in this pile. It's also, from the look of it, not sort of rubble or things like that. It's shredded, which is what happens to municipal waste before they put it in landfill. So this may well be waste that should have gone to a municipal landfill but has been dumped there instead, possibly due to some kind of corruption or a contract that's gone awry. This isn't sort of a one-man band job. This is serious organised waste crime.
So what you're saying potentially here, Paul, this is municipal contracts, tons and tons and tons, what schools, public buildings, the like, and that goes to a contractor. They're meant to put it in landfill, but they have to pay a premium to do that. But they're not paying that premium. They're dumping it on public land and banking the money. Presumably, if that's the case, they can be located, tracked and jailed.
You would hope so. I mean, the landfill tax alone from this pile would be around £1 million, which has obviously been effectively stolen. It's not actually public land, it's private. We don't think the landowner has any knowledge of this. It's happened. But again, the problem is here as well, is like, how did they manage to do that? How do they manage to... this didn't happen in one day. This happened in probably months, and the Environment Agency didn't notice. There's been complaints about it for months, we've heard, and the Environment Agency didn't take action.
And how did that much garbage dumped on river banks end up in the river?
Sorry?
How did that much garbage dumped in the riverbanks end up in the river?
That's actually, it's still on the bank at the moment. So the problem is it's along the bank. It's only a couple of metres from the river.
But it's leaching water through it and poisoning.
Every time it rains, the rain goes through the garbage and picks up whatever is in it. We don't have any idea what's in it and puts it straight into the river. Obviously, there's also litter that's blowing into the river, etc. And we need the Environment Agency to take some action now. At Hodeswood in Kent, where there was a similar, perhaps bigger dump last year, it took local campaigners 6 months to a year of dogged campaigning to make the Environment Agency come in and pick it up. Otherwise, they're just going to leave it there. And unless we force them, the Environment Agency may well just leave this pile here for months or years without taking any action.
It absolutely needs to be sorted out. Thank you so much for coming in and joining us on the studio today. That's Paul Pauzan from Lawyers for Nature. Thank you very much. Now, a spokesperson from the Environment Agency told GB News this. Specialist officers are investigating waste dumped near the A34 at Kidlington, and their role will be to find out who left the waste there and take appropriate action. And we share the public's anger about incidents like this, which is why we take action against those responsible for waste crime. Anyone with information here, or if they suspect waste crime elsewhere, can call the Environment Agency's 24 incident hotline. Now, coming up next, we'll continue our build-up to the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's so-called sweeping new asylum and deportation reform statement. Could they be paying tens of thousands to illegal migrants to go home? This is GB News, Britain's news channel. You're with me, Martin Daubney. But first, though, is your weather with Annie.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of today, it will stay dry for many of us, but in the north and east we will see a few showers. Some of these falling as snow across the far north of Scotland, where there is a risk of ice overnight. And we will see that wetter, sleetier weather become a little bit more widespread across parts of Scotland and northern England through Tuesday. But through tonight, we'll continue to see showers across the far north of Scotland, so we could see some ice on the roads. Elsewhere, it will turn quite chilly overnight with clear skies, particularly across eastern areas. So we're expecting a widespread rural frost by tomorrow morning. But across western areas, Northern Ireland in particular, a blanket of cloud will keep temperatures a little bit above zero. But we'll start to see this rain falling as sleet and snow, particularly over the high ground of parts of central, southern Scotland, parts of the Pennines as well. The highest parts of the Pennines could see some sleety accumulations as well. Quite a lot of cloud around across more central, southern areas of England as well. But it's further north and west where we'll see a much wetter start to the day, and it's going to feel quite wintry. As I said, we do have warnings in force throughout Tuesday, all the way through until Thursday, in fact, for wintry hazards such as snow and ice. It's the first spell of winter, so do take care if you're travelling over the next few days, particularly in the evenings and early mornings. And we will see some more widespread rain spread across more northern areas throughout Tuesday. That will push into the far south and east by the end of the day, but it should remain fairly dry and bright for a lot of the day across the far southeast. Temperatures across the southeast 9 or 10 degrees, a little bit warmer than elsewhere. We've got a very brisk northerly wind bringing quite a chilly feel. Now, the snow warnings continue across parts of Scotland through Tuesday evening. We'll start to see some accumulations above around 150 metres, and it's going to get even colder as we head to Wednesday and Thursday. That's when we're expecting the coldest part of the week, with further snow for many northern areas.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you so much for helping us to reach 8 million followers and subscribers across our social media channels. That's 8 million fearless Brits standing up for what really matters.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Expect delays on the M4 eastbound between Junction 28 Tredegar Park and Junction 26 Malpas due to congestion. On the A38 northbound between the A5121 Burton-upon-Trent South and the junction with the A5132, anticipate 20-minute delays. And on the trains, East Midlands Railway is experiencing disruption through Warrington Central, delaying services between Luton and London St Pancras International. Hart Hill services will be closed from 9 this evening until 6 tomorrow, affecting both the 17th and 18th of November. plan accordingly and seek alternate services if needed. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you could win your Christmas this year paid for by us. First, we'll give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you a further £10,000 cash to spend on all your Christmas presents, even the tree. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with £1,000 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device, and as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very, very good afternoon to you and a happy Monday. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting live across the UK. All the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. And here's what's coming up on today's action-packed show.
Will announce the most significant changes to our asylum system in modern times.
Yes, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is set to unveil Labour's so-called tough, uncompromising Danish-style asylum and immigration crackdown, pledging to unite a divided country. But with lawyers, MPs from the Labour Party and the ECHR threatening to derail the plan, we'll ask if it's doomed to fail. We'll cut live to the comments for that statement when it comes out shortly. And first, they taxed our Cornish pasties, and then they came for our fizzy drinks. And now Rachel Reeves is proposing a milkshake tax. Well, this so-called fun tax could net the Treasury up to £100 million a year, but will it be the final straw for the embattled British dairy industry? And Keir Starmer is expected to tell Donald Trump that the BBC must get its house in order after the US president vowed to go ahead with a lawsuit of up to $5 billion against the broadcaster, and will debate whether the PM could stop this lawsuit. Now, fly tippers have dumped hundreds of tons of waste stacked 10 metres high in a field in Oxfordshire, and the removal cost is greater than the entire annual budget of the local district council. We'll speak to a furious environmentalist who will go to jail for this eco-vandalism, and that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. We're expecting to go to the Commons to hear Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, unveil her so-called Danish-style immigration crackdown on illegal immigrants in this hour. Some detail has emerged, and it's come out that there will now not be an upper price cap on what we pay illegal immigrants to go home. It was capped at around a couple of £1,000. In Denmark, the fee is up to €27,000, about 23 grand, to pay illegal immigrants to go home. Is that money well spent, Or is it a complete and utter waste of money and an insult to British taxpayers? In a short moment's time, we'll be joined by a Danish journalist for him to explain how it's been a great success in his nation. And then we'll go to the Commons for that hugely anticipated statement. Can it stop the Labour Party from sinking as the Tories before them were sunk by the small boats crisis? Get in touch usual ways. GBNews.com/your say is the way to do so. But now it's time for your headlines. And here's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. The headlines at 5:02. The Prime Minister has called the case for reforming the UK's asylum system devastatingly simple, as sweeping changes have now been published ahead of the Home Secretary speaking in the Commons this afternoon. The full list of reforms has been published online under 3 headings: reducing arrivals, increasing removals and safe and legal routes. Under the plans, asylum seekers will be returned home once their country is deemed safe, and most will face a 20-year wait before applying for permanent settlement. Deportations will also be sped up when claims are rejected, with a new drive to cut multiple appeals. Other new measures that Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is announcing include using artificial intelligence for facial recognition to detect people lying about being children. Sir Keir Starmer said the country needs a stronger deterrent effect and rules that are robustly enforced. The overhaul is already proving divisive. Several Labour MPs have publicly criticised the changes. Backbencher Stella Creasy labelled the reforms performatively cruel, while the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, says her party will lend support to Labour.
I do welcome the government's announcements. It is nowhere near enough. We're going to work with them to try and get this through, because what I know is that a lot of Labour backbenchers hate this stuff. We've already had about 10 of them come out to criticise their own government. They're going to need us if this is actually going to work. But the truth is, it doesn't go far enough. Unless we leave the ECHR, I suspect Shabana Mahmood is going to run into the same legal problems that the Conservative government ran into.
Elsewhere today, the chairman of the BBC has told staff there is no basis for a defamation case after Donald Trump announced plans to sue the corporation for up to $5 billion over an edited panorama clip. In an internal email, Samir Shah said the BBC is determined to fight and is mindful of its duty to protect licence fee payers amid speculation over potential legal costs. It follows President Trump's accusation that the broadcaster cheated by altering his January the 6th speech, despite the BBC already apologising for what it called an error of judgment in the edit. The fallout has already led to the resignations of Director General Tim Davie and News Chief Deborah Turness, with the Panorama episode permanently withdrawn from broadcast. Birmingham bin strikes could continue beyond May's local elections unless a deal is reached, Unite the Union has warned. Today, workers overwhelmingly voted to extend their strike action, as those who are directly employed by Birmingham City Council are now set to be joined on picket lines by agency workers from the 1st of December. Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham called the move by agency workers a real escalation in the dispute. A couple in Hertfordshire say police have paid them damages after they were arrested in January for comments made in a parents' WhatsApp group about their daughter's primary school. Rosalind Levine and Maxie Allen were held for 11 hours after officers said they needed to investigate claims of harassment and malicious communications. No charges were brought, and the couple now say they're very unhappy with the force, arguing that people under investigation are often given almost no information about why they're being targeted. They warn cases like theirs make it look like police are policing free speech when investigations collapse. Bangladesh's former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been sentenced to death. She's been found guilty of ordering last year's crackdown on student protests, where the UN says up to 1,400 people were killed. Hasina, who was tried while in exile in India, has called the verdict biased and politically motivated. The ruling puts pressure on New Delhi to extradite her, though that remains unlikely. Security is now tightening across Bangladesh as protests are starting to erupt over the verdict. And a cold weather warning is in effect, with snow and ice expected as temperatures plunge. The UK Health Security Agency has issued the alert for the East and West Midlands, the North East, North West and Yorkshire, running through to next week. It follows the coldest night since March over the weekend, when temperatures dropped to -7 in the Scottish Highlands. Officials say the freezing conditions could pose risks for vulnerable people, urging the public to check in on those who may need support. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3171 and €1.1359. The price of gold is £3,090 and 5 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 9,680 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Kate. Just a reminder, we're expecting to cross to the House of Commons to hear Shabana Mahmood deliver this hugely anticipated address on this crackdown on illegal immigration. That's our top story today. The Home Secretary is set to introduce some of its toughest measures yet on illegal migration. With countries that refuse to take back failed asylum seekers or foreign criminals, they're to face a total visa ban. But could the ECHR, MPs, laws, the establishment, media and lawyers derail the plans? Well, let's find out how this worked successfully in in Denmark, beg your pardon. I speak with the opinions editor at Vikvavsen. That's Christian Folger, live from Denmark. Christian, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have your company. So we're hugely looking forward to an announcement of Danish-style clampdowns. Tell us how they've gone down in Denmark and how successful you believe it's been and how the public have taken to it.
Well, it has been rather successful. It has brought down the numbers of asylum seekers in Denmark, but the Danish strategy is to deter people from applying for asylum in Denmark. It's not to make sure they don't apply for asylum in Europe. So it's not necessarily so that the UK can copy Denmark successfully, because the pull factor will be much, much bigger when it comes to Britain. No one speaks Danish in the world, but a lot of people speak English. So I think many migrants will want to come to the UK and apply for asylum, no matter how harsh you make the terms.
And I wonder actually if you've just pointed to a huge flaw in this plan, because the entire population of Denmark is only around 6 million. It's a much smaller nation in comparison with the United Kingdom. And as you say, the pull factor is greater here also. Could I also ask you, Christian, about Denmark's plans, well, it actually is happening, to pay thousands and thousands of euros to those to be deported. 27,000 euros can be the fee that's paid by the taxpayer to make people leave the country. That's a huge sum of money. How did that go down with the Danish public?
Well, it hasn't been that much criticism of the amount of money, but it hasn't been so successful. Not that many people accept this sum of money to return to their homelands. And the only criticism we have had was when one of the people taking this amount of money then returned back to Denmark and applied for, public unemployment benefits once again. So, and then we couldn't claim back those money back. So he had received those 20-something thousand euros and, well, we couldn't get them back.
And Christian, there's also a controversial part of your plan where valuables can be seized from those coming to your country illegally over the value of £1,000. Some people in Britain are comparing that to the way that the Jews were treated in the 1930s. Of course, a lot of people say that's a ridiculous comparison. If you're going to a country illegally and you have assets, surely it's fair and proper for the authorities to seize them.
Yes, actually, that rule change meant that asylum seekers were to be treated as Danish citizens. So if they do get unemployment benefits, then it's the same rule for Danish citizens, that if you have valuables at a certain value, then you can't get unemployment benefits unless you first use those values. So it's not to say that they are specially treated. They were actually treated special before. And now there's the same rules for asylum seekers as for Danish citizens in terms of unemployment benefits.
And Christian, could I ask you about the politics in Denmark? Because obviously the Labour Party are from the political left, but they're facing huge pressure on British soil from Nigel Farage's reform, the political right. In Denmark, they're very proud of saying that this policy, the tough policy of repatriation, kept away the hard right. Is that the case?
Yes and no. The Social Democrats in Denmark changed their policies after a huge defeat in 2015. And they copied the politics of what people would call far right. And that was very successful. And the following election, they won. So in that sense, they have successfully copied the far right and made it their own policies. But there has been divisions within the Social Democratic Party. There has been criticism. And it's now, again, an issue in the Danish political debate, how far one should go. And now what you would call far right, the Danish People's Party, they're proposing far harsher measures in terms of repatriation and remigration, as they call it. And here, the Social Democrats are suddenly a bit unclear about what they want, and that could change the dynamics of Danish politics and again make the Danish People Party the bigger party. Not that they were ever bigger than the Social Democrats, but they were very close. So in that sense, the political landscape in Denmark is actually changing as we speak now on this very topic, and that could also mean that the following election will perhaps end in a defeat for the Social Democrats.
OK, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have your company there live from Denmark. That's Christian Foldiger. Thanks for joining us on the show today. Thank you very much indeed. Let's speak now with my next guest, and that's the immigration lawyer, Paul Turner. Paul, welcome to the show. May I ask you for your take there? You would have heard our previous guest there, Christian, talk about how the Overton window has shifted dramatically in Denmark. The left-wing party there had to adopt the policies, you might say, of the right to survive. Do you think that's what's going on here? Do you think this is really the true Labour Party, or is this the Labour Party that has to do this just to survive a battering at the next general election?
Right, that it's an attempt at survival by the Labour Party. Both Reform and the Conservatives have successfully made immigration the issue. And the Labour Party have decided, perhaps they thought they were being clever, to have a little trip over to Copenhagen and pick up the Danish policy. Where they've been novel in that is that they have come back and come out with some what are headline-grabbing suggestions, such as refugees will be given temporary status, reviewable after every 2.5 years, and it will take them some 20 years to before they would acquire permanent status. So whether it's workable or not, quite frankly, Martin, I don't think it is.
And I want to ask your opinion on why that is, because, of course, you're an immigration lawyer. A lot of people have pointed, Paul, to the fact that the ECHR, human rights laws, as they are, the right to a family life, Article 8, the same old problems that sunk the Rwanda plan are surely likely to sink Shabana Mahmood's plan, aren't they?
Not necessarily. I think that this is a case of the government shooting itself in the foot. At the moment, the last count, there's around about 75,000 cases in the asylum backlog, about 90,000 cases waiting for an appeal. Now, these cases aren't being processed because there are not enough resources. At the moment, Martin, an asylum case is dealt with once. There's an adjudication as to whether the person is a genuine refugee, and then they're granted status and then indefinite leave to remain. What the Home Office are proposing to do is every 2.5 years revisit the original decision. So over the course of a 20-year period, that could mean 8 decisions and potentially 8 appeals for every asylum seeker. Now, at the moment, if they can't process the 30 or 40,000 people that come over in a small boat, if you multiply that number by 3 or 4 times, I'm not quite sure how they're going to make this workable. At the moment, and illegal migration, people smuggling is an evil. But at the moment, the focus is on the people that I can see on your screen getting on the boat or in the boat, and not the Home Office for not processing it properly. And that's the problem. It sounds fantastic. I mean, I did hear that one of the ministers was threatening to take asylum seekers' e-bikes off them or their cars. And I'm not sure many of them come over in a small boat with a car. So it does seem to me like it's an awful lot of uncosted talk.
Paul Turner, as we await that statement from Shabana Mahmood in the Commons, it's all about the pull factor. Is there anything in this outline, this proposition that you've seen, that you think will significantly diminish the pull factor to those coming to the United Kingdom, the threat of deportation, the threat of losing valuables, or is this simply a pea shooter against a tank? Will the tide simply continue of illegal migrants coming into the United Kingdom, in your opinion?
I think it will have no impact at all. People that are coming to the United Kingdom come here, I think our Danish friend said, because people speak English. English is a success as a language. The United Kingdom is broadly a very welcoming country. There are obviously employment opportunities in the black economy for people. And as long as people can get into the country, as long as there's no realistic prospect of them being removed from this country and that they're able to work and earn money in this country, they will still come here. It doesn't change. And if the Home Office are not processing their claims quickly enough, it's not going to change anything. For somebody in France that's looking for a better country, come to the UK. You'll find work. You'll find people that speak your language. Nothing's going to happen to you. And then a big pull factor is the fact that there are lots of other people that have already made that journey that are in the United Kingdom and sadly will advocate for their friends or other people to come over. I don't think this is going to make a difference. I think the real issue is that the Home Office is not funded properly. The people at the Home Office are under a great deal of pressure. And until the Home Office gets its act sorted out, they can pass as many new laws and rules as they want. But if they can't put them into effect, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think you're entirely right. Immigration lawyer Paul Turner, thanks for joining us on the show. As ever, it's a pleasure to have your company on the show. Thank you. And just a reminder, we are expecting that hugely anticipated statement from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, in the Commons. Live pictures there. They're so-called emergency questions, urgent questions. Before this, quite what was more urgent than this, the biggest pressing matter of our time, is quite beyond me. We're waiting for those so-called sweeping reforms, the UK immigration system. You'll not want to miss it. Don't go anywhere. You're with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. It's 5:23 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, breaking news. Very shortly, we're expecting to hear from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, in the chamber, in the House of Commons there. There are three so-called urgent questions before we get to Shabana Mahmood. The first one was from Mel Stride on the media being briefed ahead of the budget. The second one was from a Plaid Cymru Member of Parliament talking about the positioning of three small modular nuclear reactors in Wales. And the third one was from a Liberal Democrat MP about that river of garbage in Oxfordshire. Three questions and a statement before we get to Shabana Mahmood. I put it to you. Is it really that urgent that we hear the minutiae of this parliamentary stuff? Or should we just get to the main statement, the entire nation waiting? What are the Labour Party going to do about illegal immigration? Unless they get on with it, it's going to sink them as sure as it sunk the Tories before them. Moving back to other matters of the day, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves is toughening up with so-called sugar taxes and extending it now to milkshakes. Well, it's all a bit, of course, to combat obesity and raise a ton of money. Now, this could mean that some sugary milkshakes will be hit with charges of up to 26 pence per litre. Back in 2023, the Prime Minister said he didn't want to add to the cost of your grocery baskets. And now, here we go, another stealth tax. Let's now speak with the business and economics commentator, Michael Wilson. Michael, welcome to the show. First, George Osborne came for our Cornish pasties. Then they came for fizzy pop. Now, milkshakes, I put it to you, is this the final straw?
There used to be a thing called purdah, didn't there, a long time ago, when chancellors didn't actually speak for a month before the budget actually happened. And we've had U-turn after hint after U-turn right now, and the markets don't like that. I don't like that. Nobody likes this kind of uncertainty. Why are the politicians for whom we in majority elected, whether we are Labour or Tory or whatever it may be, why are they not taking charge of this? They clearly aren't. What appears to be is this kind of media entertainment exercise that's taking place, whereby they drop a hint and then withdraw it, and then first of all it was income tax, now it's no longer income tax. The only thing that you can actually...
Okay, Michael Wilson seems to have frozen there. Maybe it's a frozen milkshake. The point I was going to put to him next is quite simple, and that is every time one of these new taxes comes out, the manufacturers simply change their recipes. We saw that with the sugar taxes. The sugar went down because artificial sweeteners were pumped in, and that keeps the sugar content down. It means the tax revenue is less, but people don't change their habits. And where it is full sugar, it tends to impact those at the bottom of the class sector the hardest. The working classes tend to get hammered disproportionately by their income. We've seen this the same with alcohol use. Have you noticed recently how when you go into a pub, those lagers that we all used to enjoy that were 5% ABV are now 4.2? They're watering down our beer. Why is that? Is it the health of the nation? Not only that. It's because they're taxed by the alcohol content. It's the same reason your wine, without you even being told, is only suddenly 11% ABV, because it takes the tax revenue down. We still pay the same price for a pint. Pints won't ever go down. A bottle of wine won't ever go down. A milkshake won't ever go down. The tax revenue simply goes up. Now, I've got live pictures on your screen there of the House of Commons as we are anticipating that hugely anticipated statements by Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, on the introduction of their so-called Danish-style clampdown on illegal immigration. 3 so-called urgent questions before that of delaying matters somewhat. The first was on Mel Stride, the briefing of the media ahead of the budget. As our guest there, Michael Wilson, said, the media knows everything about the budget before it's even come out. Mel Stride took umbrage with that. Second question, small modular nuclear reactors in Wales. This question here is about the garbage, the river of garbage in Oxfordshire. You can see Shabana Mahmood there, sat very patiently while this parliamentary business is swept to one side. We're awaiting an announcement from the Home Secretary that will surely define the destiny of this Labour government. Can they finally clamp down on illegal immigration? So far, it's got worse. Over 38,000 small boats have come in this year, set for a record year. Unless the Labour Party stops the boats, it will sink them ashore as the issue sunk the Conservatives. What can we expect today? Well, the statement was released around about an hour ago, and a key bit that's leapt out is that the British taxpayer will now be paying people to go back to their country a lot more than they do already. £3,000 per person is the present cap. Nigel Farage's Reform UK was proposing £2,500 as part of Operation Restoring Justice. But in Denmark, wait for it, taxpayers pay up to €27,000, about 23,000 quid, per illegal immigrant to send them home. They're incentivised to go back. But the numbers are wildly different. The population of Denmark is only 6 million. There were 965 enforced deportations last year. The numbers are tiny in comparison with the United Kingdom. Can this policy be upscaled in a way the British taxpayer will be satisfied with? Can it be upscaled in a way that will stop the boats, smash the gangs? If they don't do it, the Labour Party surely is toast. We'll cross back to that statement when it happens. We'll cross live to that. Plenty more to come throughout the rest of the show, but for now, if you're travelling home from work or from school, here's your traffic and your travel updates. Stick with us and please stay safe. We'll see you soon.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. Road users on the M4 westbound at junction 32, Corriton, face congestion on the off-slip. In Oxfordshire, the M40 northbound between junction 6 and 8A has one lane closed due to incidents, with normal conditions expected by 6:30 this evening. The A30 westbound in Devon faces delays between the A375 and the M5 due to an accident with one lane closed. And on the trains, East Midlands Railway services are disrupted through Warrington Central, with delays between Luton and London St Pancras International. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Now, before we go back to that statement from Shabana Mahmood, it's time for your latest news headlines, and here's Katie Bowen.
Good afternoon. The headlines at 5:31. The Prime Minister has called the case for reforming the UK's asylum system devastatingly simple, warning of the severe strain the system is under. That says sweeping changes have now been published ahead of the Home Secretary speaking in the Commons imminently. We'll keep you up to date. The chairman of the BBC has told staff there is no basis for a defamation case after Donald Trump announced plans to sue the corporation. Samir Shah said the BBC is determined to fight in an internal email. Birmingham bin strikes could continue beyond May's local elections unless a deal is reached, Unite the Union has warned. Those who are directly employed by Birmingham City Council are now set to be joined on picket lines by agency workers from the 1st of December. Bangladesh's former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been sentenced to death. She's been found guilty of ordering last year's crackdown on student protests, where the UN says up to 1,400 people were killed. And a cold weather warning is in effect, with snow and ice expected as temperatures plunge. The UK Health Security Agency has issued the alert for the East and West Midlands, the North East, North West and Yorkshire, running through to next week. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of today, it will stay dry for many of us, but in the north and east we will see a few showers, some of these falling as snow across the far north of Scotland, where there is a risk of ice overnight, and we will see that wetter, sleetier weather become a little bit more widespread across parts of Scotland and northern England through Tuesday. But through tonight we'll continue to see showers across the far north of Scotland, so we could see some ice on the roads. Elsewhere it will turn quite chilly overnight with clear skies, particularly across eastern areas, so we're expecting a widespread rural frost by tomorrow morning. But across western areas, Northern Ireland in particular, a blanket of cloud will keep temperatures a little bit above zero, but we'll start to see this rain falling as sleet and snow, particularly over the high ground of parts of central southern Scotland, parts of the Pennines as well. The highest parts of the Pennines could see some sleety accumulations as well. Quite a lot of cloud around across more central southern areas of England as well, but it's further north and west where we'll see a much wetter start to the day, and it's going to feel quite wintry. As I said, we do have warnings in force throughout Tuesday, all the way through until Thursday, in fact, for wintry hazards such as snow and ice. It's the first spell of winter, so do take care if you're travelling over the next few days, particularly in the evenings and early mornings. And we will see some more widespread rain spread across more northern areas throughout Tuesday. That will push into the far south and east by the end of the day, but it should remain fairly dry and bright for a lot of the day across the far southeast. Temperatures across the southeast 9 or 10 degrees, a little bit warmer than elsewhere. We've got a very brisk northerly wind bringing quite a chilly feel. Now, the snow warnings continue across parts of Scotland through Tuesday evening. We'll start to see some accumulations above around 150 metres, and it's going to get even colder as we head to Wednesday and Thursday. That's when we're expecting the coldest part of the week, with further snow for many northern areas.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racist tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Welcome back. 5:36. Breaking news there. Live pictures of the Commons. We're hugely anticipating to hear from the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood shortly up. The statement now any second on this so-called Danish-style immigration system. Surely this will be a defining moment in this Labour Party's government. A spectacular failure to smash the gangs, a spectacular failure to take back control of our borders, as we saw with the Conservatives before them. They couldn't stop the boats. So Keir Starmer thus far has not managed to smash The gangs, the silver bullet is meant to be coming at us any moment from the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood. Most of this arrangement has been published. Arrivals on safe and legal routes to be capped. An AI age estimator to stop people pretending to be children. Will that be enough? Will that go far enough? The absurd situation where asylum seekers have been able to go on holiday, even to so-called war zones, and simply waltz back into Britain. Apparently, that will end. Anybody doing that will be denied refugee status. How's that ever the place? Here's Shabana Mahmood.
Madam Deputy Speaker, with your permission, I will make a statement about how we restore order and control to our borders. I do so as this government publishes the most significant reform to our migration system in modern times. This country will always offer sanctuary to those fleeing danger. But we must also acknowledge that the world has changed, and our asylum system has not changed with it. Our world is a more volatile and more mobile place. Huge numbers are on the move. While some are refugees, others are economic migrants seeking to use and abuse our asylum system. And even genuine refugees are passing through other safe countries searching for the most attractive place to seek refuge. The burden that has fallen on this country has been heavy. 400,000 have sought asylum here in the last 4 years. Over 100,000 people now live in asylum accommodation, and over half of refugees remain on benefits 8 years after they have arrived. To the British public who foot the bill, the system feels out of control and unfair. It feels that way because it is. The pace and scale of change has destabilised communities. It is making our country a more divided place. There will never be a justification for the violence and racism of a minority. But if we fail to deal with this crisis, we will draw more people down a path that starts with anger and ends in hatred. I have no doubt about who we really are in this country. We are open, tolerant, and generous. But the public rightly expect that we can determine who enters this country and who must leave. To maintain the generosity that allows us to provide sanctuary, we must restore order and control. Rather than deal substantively with this problem, the last Conservative government wasted precious years and £700 million on their failed Rwanda plan, with the lamentable result of just 4 volunteers removed from the country. As a result, they left us with the grotesque chaos of asylum seekers housed in hotels, shuttled around in taxis, with the taxpayer footing the bill. My predecessor as Home Secretary picked up this dreadful inheritance and rebuilt the foundations of a collapsed asylum system. Decision-making has been restored, with a backlog now 18% lower than when we entered office. Removals have increased, reaching nearly 50,000 under this government. Immigration enforcement has hit record levels, with over 8,000 arrests in the last year. The Border Security Bill is progressing through Parliament, and my predecessor struck a historic agreement with the French, which means small boat arrivals can now be sent back to France. These are vital steps, but we must go further. Today, we have published Restoring Order and Control, a new statement on our asylum policy. Its goals are twofold. Firstly, to reduce illegal arrivals into this country, and secondly, to increase removals of those with no right to be here. It starts by accepting an uncomfortable truth. While asylum claims fall across Europe, they are rising here. And that is because of the comparative generosity of our asylum offer when compared to so many of our European neighbours. This generosity is a factor that draws people to these shores on a path that runs through other safe countries. Nearly 40% come on small boats and over perilous channel crossings, but a roughly equal number come here legally via a visitor, work or study visa and then go on to claim asylum. They do so because refugee status is the most generous route into this country. An initial grant lasts 5 years, which is then converted almost automatically into permanent settled status. In other European countries, things are done differently. In Denmark, refugee status is temporary and they provide safety and sanctuary until it is possible for a refugee to return home. In recent years, asylum claims have hit a 40-year low. And now, across Europe, countries are tightening their systems in similar ways. We must act too. We will do so by making refugee status temporary, not permanent. A grant of refugee status will last 2.5 years, not 5. It will be renewed only if it is impossible for a refugee to return home. Permanent settlement will now come at 20 years, not 5. I know this country welcomes people who contribute. And for those who want to stay and are willing and able to, we will create a new work and study visa route solely for refugees, with a quicker path to permanent settlement. To encourage refugees into work, we will also consult on removing benefits for those who are able to work but choose not to. Outside of the most exceptional circumstances, family reunion will not be possible, with a refugee only able to bring family over if they have joined a work and study route and if qualifying tests are met. While over 50,000 were granted refugee status in the last year, more than 100,000 claimants and failed asylum seekers remain in taxpayer-funded accommodation. And we know that criminal gangs use the prospect of free bed and board to promote their small boat crossings. We have already announced that we will empty asylum hotels by the end of the Parliament, and we are exploring a number of large military sites as an alternative. We will now also remove the 2005 legislation that created a duty to support asylum seekers, reverting to a legal power to do so instead. While we will continue to support those who play by the rules, those who do not, be that through criminality or antisocial behaviour, can have their support removed. We will also remove our duty to support those who have a right to work. It is right that those who do receive support pay for it if they can. So those with income or assets will have to contribute to the cost of their stay. This will end the absurdity that we currently experience, where an asylum seeker receiving £800 each month from his family and who had recently acquired an Audi was receiving free housing at the taxpayer's expense, and the courts judged that we could do nothing about it. Mr. Speaker, these measures are designed to tackle the pull factors that draw people into this country. But reducing the number of arrivals is just half of the story. We must also enforce our rules and remove those who have no right to be here. This will mean restarting removals to countries where they have been paused. In recent months, we have begun voluntary removal of failed asylum seekers to Syria once again. However, there are still many failed asylum seekers here from Syria, most of whom fled a regime that has since been toppled. Other countries are planning to enforce removals, and we will follow suit. Where a failed asylum seeker cannot be returned home, we will also continue to explore the possibility of return hubs, with negotiations ongoing. We must remove those who have failed asylum claims, regardless of who they are. Today, we are not removing family groups, even when we know that their home country is perfectly safe. There are, for instance, around 700 Albanian families living in taxpayer-funded accommodation, having failed their asylum claims. This is true despite an existing returns agreement, and that Albania is a signatory to the European Convention on Human Rights. So we will now begin the removal of families. Where possible, we will encourage a voluntary return, but where an enforced return is necessary, that is what we will do. Where the barrier to a return is not the individual nor the UK government, but the receiving country, we will take action. I can announce today that we have told Angola, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Namibia that if they do not comply with international rules and norms, we will impose visa penalties on them. And I am sending a wider message here. Unless other countries heed this lesson, further sanctions will follow. Much of the delay in our removals, however, comes from the sclerotic nature of our own system. In March of this year, the appeals backlog stood at 51,000 cases. This government has already increased judicial sitting days, but reform is required. So we will create a new appeals body staffed by professional independent adjudicators. And we will ensure there is early legal representation available to advise claimants and ensure their issues are properly considered. Cases with a low chance of success will be fast-tracked, and claimants will have just one opportunity to claim and one to appeal, ending the merry-go-round of claims and appeals that frustrate so many removals. While some barriers to removal are the result of process, others are substantive issues related to the law itself. There is no doubt that the expanded interpretation of parts of the European Convention on Human Rights has contributed. This is particularly true of Article 8, the right to a family life. The courts have adopted an ever-expanding interpretation of this right, and as a result, many people have been allowed to come to this country when they would otherwise have had no right to. And we have been unable to remove others when the case for doing so seems overwhelming. This includes cases like an arsonist sentenced to 5 years in prison, whose deportation was blocked on the grounds that his relationship with his sibling may suffer. And more than half of those detained are now delaying or blocking their removal by raising a last-minute rights claim. Article 8 is a qualified right. That means we are not prevented from removing individuals or refusing an application to move to the UK if it is in the public interest. To narrow Article 8 rights, we will therefore make 3 important changes in both domestic law and our immigration rules. Firstly, we will define what exactly a family is, narrowing this down to parents and their children. Secondly, we will define the public interest test so the default becomes a removal or refusal, with Article 8 rights only permissible in the most exceptional circumstances. Thirdly, we will tighten where Article 8 claims can be heard, ensuring only those who are living in the UK can lodge a claim rather than their family members overseas, and that all claims are heard first by the Home Office and not in a courtroom. We will also pursue international reform of a second element of the European Convention, the application of Article 3, the prohibition on torture and inhuman, degrading treatment or punishment. We will never return anyone to be tortured in their home country. But the definition of degrading treatment has expanded into the realm of the ridiculous. Today we have criminals we seek to deport, but discover we cannot because the prisons in their home country have cells that are deemed too small, or even mental health provision that is not as good as our own. As Article 3 is an absolute right, a public interest test cannot be applied. For that reason, we are seeking reform at the Council of Europe, and we do so alongside international partners who have raised similar concerns. But it is not just international law that binds us. According to data from 2022, over 40% of those detained for removal claimed they were modern-day slaves. This well-intentioned law is being abused by those who seek to frustrate a legitimate removal. So I will bring forward legislation that tightens the modern slavery system to ensure that it protects those it was designed for and not those who seek to abuse it. Taken together, Madam Deputy Speaker, these are significant reforms. They are designed to ensure our asylum system is fit for the modern world and that we retain public consent for the very idea of providing refuge. We will always be a country that offers protection to those fleeing peril, just as we did in recent years when Ukraine was invaded, when Afghanistan was evacuated, and when we repatriated Hong Kongers. For that reason, as order and control is restored, we will open new, capped, safe and legal routes into this country. These will make sponsorship the primary means by which we resettle refugees, with voluntary and community organisations given greater involvement to both receive refugees and support them, working within caps set by government. We will also create a new route for displaced students to study in the UK and another for skilled refugees to work here. And of course, we will always remain flexible to new crises across the world as they happen. I know the British people do not want to close the doors, but until we restore order and control, those who seek to divide us will grow stronger. It is our job as a Labour government to unite where there is division. So we must now build an asylum system for the world as it is, one that restores order and control, one that opens safe and legal routes to those fleeing danger across the world, and one that sustains our commitment to providing refuge for this generation and those to come. I know the country we are. We are open, tolerant, and generous. We are the Greater Britain that those on this side of the House believe in, not the littler England that some would wish we would become. These reforms are designed to bring unity where others seek to divide. Madam Deputy Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Home Secretary for advance sight of his statement, most of which I read in the Sunday Telegraph, actually. But I am pleased that she is bringing forward measures to crack down on illegal immigration. It's not enough, but it is a start, and it's also a change. It's a change from her previous position in opposition of a general amnesty for illegal migrants. But I do want to praise the new Home Secretary, Madam Deputy Speaker. She's bringing fresh energy and a clearer focus to this problem, and she has got more done in 70 days in the job than her predecessor did in a year. She seems to get what many on the benches behind refuse to accept. She is right to say that if we fail to deal with the crisis, we will draw more people to a path that starts with anger and ends in hatred. But we will also allow our English Channel to operate as an open route into this country for anyone prepared to risk their lives and pay criminal gangs. This is not fair. It is not fair on British citizens. It is not fair on those who come here legally, and it is not fair on those in genuine need who are pushed to the back of the queue because the system is overwhelmed. Anyone who cannot see by now that simply tinkering with the current system isn't going to fix this problem is either living in la-la land or being willfully obstructive. It is a shame that it has taken Labour a year in office to realise there is a borders crisis. Yes. I don't know why they're chuntering. What was their first act in government? Her predecessor's first act was to scrap the Rwanda plan, which was already, yes, they're cheering, it was already starting to act as a deterrent before it even got off the ground. And before it started, Labour threw away all of our hard work, the taxpayers' money. They're the ones who have wasted their money, not us. But this statement, Madam Deputy Speaker, is an admission that her predecessor's immigration and borders bill will not work. But I'm glad to see them now changing course. The powers they're using in this bill, they all voted down when we were in government. They wouldn't be able to do that if we hadn't got it through. None of them know the work that was done. They're just cheering nonsensically, but we know what has happened since they came into office. In fact, the Home Secretary will know that in the 70 days that she has been in office, 10,000 people have crossed the Channel. And in the last year, we have seen record levels of asylum claims. The problem has got worse since Labour came into office and is getting even worse by the day. But I am afraid to tell her that what she is announcing is not going to work on its own, and some of these measures will, in fact, take us backwards. I say that to her with no ill will, and I hope she believes me. when I say I genuinely want her to succeed. Because on this side of the House, we are speaking from experience. We know how difficult this is. It is, we are. And we're not going to take any lectures from the people who voted down every single measure to control immigration. Some of the measures she is announcing today, Madam Deputy Speaker, are undoubtedly positive steps. Baby steps, but positive nonetheless. We welcome making refugee status temporary, and we welcome removing the last Labour government's legislation that created a duty to support asylum seekers. She's right to do that. Yeah. However, some of what she is announcing simply does not go far enough. On this side of the House, we believe that anyone who arrives illegally, especially from safe countries, should be deported and banned from claiming asylum. Does the Home Secretary agree that anyone who comes to this country illegally should be deported? I'd like to know, I think the country would like to know, because this announcement means that some people who arrive will be allowed to stay. They just need to wait 20 years before getting permanent settlement. That does not remove the pull factor. But the main problem is that for as long as the UK is in the ECHR, illegal immigrants and those exploiting our system will use human rights laws to block anything she does to solve this. I know this because I saw it happen again and again over the last 4 years. I know she is seeing it too. We even saw it this year with the Prime Minister's one-in, one-out scheme, which has seen people return to France come back yet again on small boats. I can guarantee that her plan to reinterpret Article 8 will not work. We tried this already. Strasbourg and UK case law will prevail. And I agree with her that the definition of degrading treatment is overinterpreted. But renegotiating Article 3 internationally will take years. Years we don't have, if it were even possible, but the fact is, it isn't. We know this because a small group of EU countries tried this earlier and they were dismissed by the Secretary-General of the Council of Europe. Her government did nothing to support them, so I'm not convinced that it's the Prime Minister's negotiating skills that are going to sort out that problem. The fact is, we have looked at this issue from every possible direction, and the reality is that any plan that doesn't include leaving the ECHR as a necessary step is wasting time we don't have. Just like their plan to smash the gangs or the one-in, one-out policy, it is time wasting and it is doomed to fail because of lawfare. We have seen this all before. The tough measures will be challenged in the courts and blocked, the new legal routes she's talking about will be exploited, and the numbers arriving on our shores and disappearing into the black economy will keep on rising. If the Home Secretary is serious about reducing these numbers, and I do believe that she is, she must be bolder. She must take steps to deter illegal immigrants from coming to Britain and deport them as soon as they arrive. Our borders plan does just that, and I know that she has studied it in detail. I've seen the looks. I know that she knows that we would leave the ECHR and ECATS to stop the Strasbourg court from frustrating deportations, that we'd establish a new removals force to make sure all illegal arrivals are deported. We would end the use of immigration tribunals, judicial review, and legal aid in immigration cases. Those are the things that are slowing us down. And we will sign returns agreements that are backed by visa sanctions to ensure we send illegal arrivals back to their place of origin. I welcome what she's talking about on Angola and Namibia, but all of us in this House know that they are not the ones creating the biggest problems. We need to be bold, serious, and unafraid to do what the British people demand: secure our borders. That is what is in our borders plan. So I urge her to take me up on my offer to work together. Not just because we have some ideas she might find useful, but because, judging by her own backbenchers' reaction today, she may find our votes come in handy. Earlier this year, we saw what happened when the government tried to make changes to the welfare bill. The Prime Minister was defeated by his own backbenchers and ended up passing legislation guaranteeing that more money would be spent on welfare. And it doesn't appear that his grip on the party has improved since then. So you can be sure that the MPs behind the Home Secretary are already plotting to block any serious changes she tries to make. We can help her with that. Why are they shaking their heads? We've seen them do it time and time again before. I would say to the Home Secretary, this is a genuine offer in the national interest. We will not play the same game they did, voting things down for no reason, but she must be clear with the House on these questions. How many people will be able to take advantage of the new work and study visa route? And what will the level of the cap be? Will it be 10,000 people? Will it be 100,000 people? The government has separately confirmed they will allow Gazan students to bring dependents. We oppose this, but can she clarify how the government will ensure that people brought to the UK from a territory under Hamas control are not a risk to our security? If she finds that the Human Rights Act and ECHR prevent her from enacting these proposals, will she use primary legislation to resolve this? Has Lord Hermer agreed? By her own admission 3 weeks ago, the Home Office is not yet fit for purpose, so why then are we creating the new legal routes for the Home Office to run? And will she take me up on this serious, genuine offer to meet and discuss how we can work together to resolve this asylum crisis, yes or no? I urge her to put party politics aside, meet with me and my Shadow Home Secretary. Let's find a way to work together.
Order. I was very generous with time then. Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Leader of the Opposition for her response to the statement. I see that the Shadow Home Secretary has been subbed out after his performance at Home Office orals. But whether it's the Shadow Home Secretary or the Leader of the Opposition herself, I'm very happy to take on the Conservative Party any day of the week. And let me start by saying we will not be taking any lessons from those opposite on how to run an effective migration system or indeed an asylum system, because I'm afraid to say to the Leader of the Opposition, she knows that her party in government gave up on governing altogether. They gave up on making asylum decisions, creating the huge backlog that it was left to this government to start to deal with. And in our first 18 months in office, removals are up 23% compared to their last 18 months in office. So I will take no lessons from anyone opposite on anything to do with our asylum system, because they simply gave up and went for an expensive gimmick that cost 700 million quid, returned 4 volunteers and was doomed to failure from the start. I will also say, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition had rather a lot to say about the European Convention on Human Rights. I don't recall the members opposite ever bringing forward any legislation to deal with the application of Article 8, the qualified right to private life, in this House. There was never a bill that sought to clarify the way that Article 8 should apply in our domestic legislation or indeed in our immigration rules. So I'm not going to take any lessons from the people that just never bothered to do that in the first place. It is this government that is rolling up our sleeves, dealing with the detailed, substantive issues that we face and thinking of proper, workable solutions to those matters. And I just say on Article 3, I think the position on Article 3 has changed across Europe. I was over at the Council of Europe in my previous role as Lord Chancellor just before the summer recess earlier on this year, and I was struck by the sheer range of other European partners who want to have this conversation. It is important, I think, that the British government leans into that conversation and seeks to work in collaboration with our European partners. The one thing that will not work is simply saying we're going to come out of the European Convention altogether. That is not and will never be the policy of this government, because we believe reform can be pursued. This is an important convention, not least because it actually underpins some of our own returns agreements, including the one with France. And so she talks about how many years it would take for us to think about reform of the convention, but it would also take just as many years, as she well knows, to start renegotiating lots of international agreements which would be affected by us coming out of the convention. So I'm afraid her solution once again will not work. And if she wanted to work together in the national interest, and look, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm always up for working in the national interest, because nothing actually matters more to me than holding our own country together and uniting our country. But they could have started by voting for the Borders Bill, which is currently going through the House and which they have voted against at every opportunity. So forgive me if I don't take this newfound conversion to working together in the national interest with much seriousness, because their own track record suggests it should not be taken seriously. And not be taken seriously, Madam Deputy Speaker, sums up the position of the Conservative Party. These are the people that left this government an abject mess to clear up. They gave up on governing. They gave up on running an effective asylum system. And now they turn up without so much as an apology to the British public, thinking that they've got anything to say that anyone wants to hear.
Before I call the first backbench contribution, can I remind members that in order to expect to be called in a statement, they should have been here from the start of the Home Secretary's statement. There may be members bobbing quite unnecessarily. Florence Eshalomi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, the reality is we need an asylum and immigration system based on fairness and consistency. My constituency of Vauxhall and Campbell Green is a testament to this. It's a place that's been made richer because of the people who've come here from all over the world. Yeah. Some of them have fled persecution and have made a home over many years. I meet these people every week in the community and including in schools where I see those children excited about their future. When this government came into office last year, they were right to say...
Well, hello there. It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This means it's time for Jubes & Co, a massive day for the country on an issue that is of significant importance to many of you watching and listening to this at home. I speak, of course, about illegal immigration, where we've just been hearing from the Home Secretary announcing plans, most of which, by the way, have been leaked left, right and centre, so not many surprises. But it was her restoring order and control. Their vision for how on earth we're going to get to grips with a system that is absolutely catastrophically out of control. Let's cross live to our political reporter, Olivia Utley. Olivia, bring viewers up to speed with what we've just been hearing.
Well, these are absolutely radical plans that the Labour Party is laying out. It is a huge shake-up of the asylum system, and the plans that Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, is proposing is essentially to mimic the Danish system. Now, in Denmark, they've managed to get illegal asylum claims down by 90% in just a decade. And some of the specific measures that Shabana Mahmood would copy would be for it to take longer for an asylum seeker to be able to claim permanent settled status, up from the 5 years that it currently is. She is also talking about this, a measure which has gained a lot of headlines today, seizing the assets of people who come here illegally in order to help fund their stay in the UK. Another measure, which is being deemed common sense actually by MPs I've spoken to on both sides of the House, is this measure to deport families all in one who come here illegally. At the moment, there is this very strange incentive system whereby if you come here by yourself illegally to the UK, you will be deported quite quickly, often to your home country. But if you come here and bring your children, i.e. take your children on a dangerous dinghy across the channel, then you are less likely to be deported. So essentially, people are bringing their children here in order to stay. Now, the big question is, will it work? Labour MPs, 17 of them, have already come forward and said that they are disgusted by the proposals. They talk of the moral ineptitude of the Home Secretary. So there is a bit of a question mark over whether it would get over even the hurdle of backbench MPs. If it does get over that hurdle, then there is the question of whether the courts will uphold it. Now, Shabana Mahmood believes there's some flexibility, even if we stay within the European Court of Human Rights. But as we know, thanks to what happened under Boris Johnson, it is very, very difficult to remove asylum seekers while we are in the ECHR. When Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, asylum seekers were literally removed from the runway when they were about to be flown off to Rwanda by pyjama injunctions from left-wing lawyers. So there is a huge question mark over whether it'll work. This is, lots of people are saying in Westminster, essentially a last roll of the dice for the Prime Minister. Labour's approval ratings are down at 18%, the lowest since the banking crisis of 2007-2008. And he desperately needs something to get the country back behind Labour. Is this it?
Olivia Utley, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed. Well, hello, as I was just been saying, I am Michelle Dewberry. This is Jubes & Co. You know the drill on this programme. We open it up to debate. Alongside me to do just that, who better on a day like this, ladies and gents? Head of Policy for Reform UK, Zia Youssef. Alongside him, Labour MP Barry Gardiner. Good evening, gents. You're very welcome tonight. As, of course, every single one of you, I know, many of you will have very strong opinions to what you are hearing hearing today. So get in touch without further ado then. Tell me what you think. You can email me gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet or you can X me. Talk is very cheap. You might like the talk, but I'm asking you tonight, do you actually trust that the Labour Party will be able to get some of this stuff over the line? Barry Gardner, let me start with you. How are you feeling about today's announcements?
I am sceptical about the ability of it to do what it says. I've looked carefully at the Danish system. And in fact, the reason that the Danish asylum applications were cut by 90% was not simply because they toughened up the offer and tried to reduce the draw factor. It was also because at the same time what they did was they closed the ability of anybody to make an application for asylum from overseas embassies. Denmark is a very different country to ours. People come here for very different reasons. They come here because they speak the English language. They come here because we're a much more multicultural society in which many of them have relatives and communities already established that they feel they can assimilate into. So I'm not convinced that this idea of reducing the attractiveness of the UK a la Denmark is something that can work. As I say, most of the reduction in the Danish applications came because they took away the ability of people to apply legally from outside of the country. Now, we've never had that ability in this country. We haven't allowed our embassies overseas to be able to do that, and therefore I don't think the impact will be the same. The other thing that I'm really concerned about is the fact that we have, in this idea of a 20-year path to settlement. We already have a 10-year path to settlement in this country. And what we want for the people who come here who are genuine asylum seekers, who are fleeing torture and persecution, to be able to contribute to the UK and to assimilate into the UK. If you feel that at any moment you're likely to be told, OK, it's now time for you to go back, it's going to be very difficult for them to establish relationships. It's going to be very difficult for them even to take on a rental agreement, for example, even if they're in work, because the landlord may say, well, tomorrow you may be told you've got to go back to your own country. So I think there are real practical issues. And above all, I think the treatment of families is concerning here. I think there are good elements here. I think what the Home Secretary said about stopping the merry-go-round of appeals is really welcome, because it's the way in which the judicial system has been clogged up. I think that has stopped us being able to get a handle on this at an earlier stage. So it's really good that she's talking about that. And also the establishing of a priority over the Article 8 private life, the right to a private life, and putting the public interest ahead of that. And that is a matter of policy. It's not something that we need to change the ECHR in order to do, but I'm glad that she's mentioned that. So I think at the moment, I think it's a mixed bag. I think some of the things will work. I think some of the things won't work. And I think it's perhaps been oversold on the Danish model, hoping that they will be able to claim that the same results will happen here.
I've got a man on my right that I can imagine is chomping at the bit to give his sentiment and thoughts and reaction to these announcements today. But crucially, I want to involve you in this conversation at home as well. How are you feeling about what you are hearing today? Is this music to your ears? And crucially, do you trust that this will actually even get over the line? Paula, GB News member, thanks for that. You say, I'm tired of all of this, Michelle. It feels the same old from Conservatives and Labour. She says nothing has changed. That's how she's feeling. Alison says, where's our Prime Minister in all of this? It feels to me, Michelle, like he's missing in action. Many of you as well saying it's good to finally hear these concerns not be described as far-right lunatic concerns, but actually to be acknowledged as fair and reasonable and justified complaints. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to allow him to come back in full, Zia Youssef, after the break. Join us then.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jubes & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Alongside me I've got Zia Youssef and I've got Barry Gardner. Now we've just been hearing tough talk in the Commons, most of it, I've got to tell you, already leaked to the media when it comes to the Labour Party's clamping down on illegal migration. Just remind ourselves what our Home Secretary said about 20 minutes ago.
We must act too. We will do so by making refugee status temporary, not permanent. A grant of refugee status will last 2.5 years, not 5. It will be renewed only if it is impossible for a refugee to return home. Permanent settlement will now come at 20 years, not 5. I know this country welcomes people who contribute, and for those who want to stay and are willing and able to, we will create a new work and study visa route solely for refugees, with a quicker path to permanent settlement. To encourage refugees into work, we will also consult on removing benefits for those who are able to work but choose not to. Human rights was first agreed.
I've got to tell you, there's lots of interesting things that have been announced today. One of the things that caught my eye is an increase in so-called safe and legal routes. Also, talk about tinkering, this notion that you've got these three nations and you're going to get tough with them, you know, that barely even sent any asylum seekers to this country in the first place. But we'll come on to all those points. What was your overall impressions here, Yousaf?
Well, sadly, none of this is going to work. And I said when I first read these proposals in the press yesterday that what Shabana Mahmood was doing a Sunak. She's doing a Sunak. She's making lots of bold promises. She's going to command a couple of news cycles, grab lots of headlines, and then she's going to be thwarted by her own backbench MPs. Pretty much everything you just heard Shabana Mahmood announce that she would do requires primary legislation. What does that mean? It means she needs the support of her backbench MPs. We already have large numbers going up all the time, people coming up publicly to oppose these measures. Backbench MPs don't want any of these things to happen. It's very similar to what happened in the Tory party. The only way you're actually going to not just stop the boats, and we've got to be really clear about this, stopping the boats is one thing, and that must happen very quickly. We must also deport people who are already here in the country illegally, of which there are well north of 1 million people, Michelle. To do that, you must leave the ECHR, replace it with a British Bill of Rights. You must derogate from every international treaty which would prevent deportations once the ECHR is withdrawn from. You need a mass deportation program. You must detain illegal migrants. That is the way you stop them from coming. All of this stuff that she has announced is performative. She's refused to leave the ECHR, and her own backbenchers are going to thwart her. So none of it, I'm afraid, is going to work. And, you know, we're in this situation now where, you know, I completely agree with the sentiments we've already heard from your viewers, which is that we've had 14 years of this from the Tories. There was no shortage of rhetoric about the boats. I mean, do you remember Rishi Sunak literally set himself these KPIs? Do you remember that with his Prime Minister? He set himself the KPIs, of which he failed at every single one, including and especially the boats, which is why they were turfed out of office. And what's really interesting about this too is it does strike me as the last act of a desperate man in terms of Keir Starmer. You know, one of the things that caught my eye was the policy she's announced where the government's going to seize jewellery from people crossing the channel illegally. I think that is a tell, because unless they think that it's you know, Lil Wayne and 50 Cent coming across constantly, I can't see how the jewellery is going to raise anything remotely a sensible amount of money to pay for all of these accommodation costs. So what that tells me is this is performative. It's designed to grab headlines. Keir Starmer's massively trying to overcorrect, given that he's so far behind the polls. Now, most polls put him behind the Greens. And I think what this has done is actually, all it's going to do is I'm going to stop the boats, but it will hasten the demise, I think, of Keir Starmer.
Well, let's look at some of these MPs then that might be thorns in the side of this government. So Nadia Whittingham, do you see what she said? She's the MP for Nottingham East. Take a listen.
The Denmark-style policies briefed in the last couple of days are dystopian. It's shameful that a Labour government is ripping up the rights and protections of people who have endured unimaginable trauma. Is this how we'd want to be treated if we were fleeing for our lives? Of course not. So how can we be adopting such obviously cruel policies? Is the Home Secretary proud that the government has sunk to such depths that it's now being praised by Tommy Robinson?
I do try hard, but every time I hear some people talking about, you know, people fleeing for their lives, my eyes, they inadvertently roll. I can't help it because they're actually fleeing from France. I mean, we do need to maintain sense of that, please. Anyway, look, Tony Vaughan, he is an MP for Folkestone. He went to Twitter today and said, yes, we're at a fork in the road, basically. He was saying the idea that recognised refugees need to be deported is wrong. We absolutely need immigration controls, and where these controls decide to grant asylum, we should welcome and integrate, not create perpetual limbo and alienation. The rhetoric around these reforms encourages the same culture of divisiveness that sees racism and abuse growing in our communities. Barry Gardner, I sense trouble ahead.
Well, look, I think there are some deeply concerning elements of what the Home Secretary's announced today. And Nadia Whittingham, I think, was right to remind us that what we're talking about here is not the economic migrants who are coming here pretending to have, you know, suffered persecution or whose families are still in a war zone. But actually, we're talking about the people who actually have, because they've been found to have suffered persecution, they're accepted by Denmark in this instance as genuine refugees, and they would be accepted here as genuine refugees. And then what you're saying is these people who have been through that suffering, and we recognise that, are now stopped from being able to get on in life, to integrate, to try and contribute to our society in a positive way. And I ameliorate that somewhat in that the Home Secretary did say that they were going to open up new work and study routes, and I'll look very carefully to see what those are. But I think what's happening here is you're saying these people will have their lives on hold for 20 years. Now, what happens if they fall in love and get married to a British citizen? There's an easy way round that repatriation, that deportation at the end of the time that the government decides that they have to go back, because they will apply for settlement under a different route. What happens if they have a child while they're here, and that child is the child of a British citizen and somebody who has no right to stay here? Are you really going to rip that family apart in 20 years' time?
But Barry,
you're not. And that's why I think it's really important that we look at the detail of this. There's some perfectly acceptable elements of what the Home Secretary has announced today. But I do think we have to think about the human consequences for people who we do recognise to have been through.
OK, but Barry, let's talk about human consequences, because what's interesting is that just like every single Labour MP we seem to hear from, all of your empathy and all of your hypotheticals revolve around the foreign nationals. And that's not to completely diminish that. But what about the British taxpayers, the people watching this programme who get up in the morning, go to work, pay their taxes and are funding billions of pounds just in accommodation costs alone? The fact is that, you know, let's talk about I'm actually deeply concerned. I will also be watching very closely what's going to happen with these new quote-unquote safe and legal routes, which Shabana Mahmood has said, Michelle. She said she's not prepared to put a cap on that at the moment. So there's a real risk here that what's happening is there's a whole load of fireworks, lots of headlines, and basically they're Trojan horsing in a new route, essentially, for these people to come not via boat anymore, which is obviously less visually damaging for them, but via other routes. And as you just said, Michelle, the notion that these people are fleeing for their lives, when, number one, they are coming from France, a country to which millions of British people go on holiday every year. So somebody should be telling them if that's a place to flee, from which one would flee for their lives. And the second point is, and it was a Ricky Gervais stand-up routine he did, where he said, sure, well, if you're fleeing war, it'll be women and children first. Oh, where are the women and children? It's just you lads, is it? And the reason that's funny is because, tragically, it is true. Despite what Darren Jones said when he was sat next to me on Question Time, the vast majority of the people coming via boat are men, and the majority of them are actually working age / military age men, and they are coming from countries like Syria, like Afghanistan, like Iraq, countries with a pedigree, frankly, and a track record of not having British interests at heart. So the whole thing is a catastrophe, and I'm afraid we've just got we've had successive governments that look at all of this through the lens of empathy for the people arriving, whose first act is to break our laws, and not the law-abiding citizens who wake up and go to work in the mornings and pay their taxes to pay for it all.
Well, look, I think it's an absolutely fair point to talk about the benefits for the people in this country. And you're right.
That should be the only thing, Barry. The British state is there to serve British citizens.
Well, it is, but it's also there to serve British citizens in terms of international obligations as well. But look, let's focus on that, because one of the things that the Home Secretary has announced today, which I welcome, is the fact that whereas it used to be the case that an asylum seeker could bring their family over without having to show that they could support them with the same financial resources as a British citizen, that now is being equalised so that they will not have that advantage over British citizens. So there are elements of what the Home Secretary's proposed that are precisely there to address that unfairness to British citizens. And I welcome that. I think that's absolutely right.
Barry, the unfairness begins upon the moment they enter our country without permission, and the taxpayer has to support them. Do you not accept that? Do you not accept that that's the beginning of the unfairness?
And that is why it is important that there are safe and legal routes, because you rightly make the point about the illegal entries into the UK. But when you're looking at these people are coming from France and you say, well, they're all men, where are the women and children? Well, of course, the answer to that is it is a perilous and arduous journey that they've made from Syria, from Afghanistan.
Barry, the point is, if you're fleeing a war zone, then the women and children go first. If you're entering a war zone, then the men go first.
Can I just make the point? And that is that under the rules, those men, if they make that journey and can get here, then they've been able to bring their families with them afterwards. And that is why it made sense for the men to go out on what was an incredibly dangerous journey, going across the channel in small boats, and then to be able to say, OK, now I've been accepted as a genuine refugee. I am now able to bring my family, my children and my partner with me. And that's the reason it was the men who came first rather than the women and children. So it did make sense, even though you've painted it in terms of a marauding army of young men coming to...
Well, I'm sorry, more people have crossed the channel illegally and arrived on our beaches without permission than stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, Barry. It meets the dictionary definition of an invasion. It is a national security emergency. There was a foiled terrorist attack. Our security services, to their credit, successfully foiled a terrorist attack on our soil, and well-sourced. There were well-sourced articles suggesting from military intelligence that those were 4 Iranian men who crossed the channel illegally who did that.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be another cold night tonight. Sleet and snow across northern areas with warnings in force from tonight until the latter part of this week, because it's going to be a very cold week. We've got northerly Arctic winds pushing across the country throughout the week, and this weather front across the northwest will bring a focus for that snow for more northern areas throughout tonight. We've got a risk of ice across the far northeast of Scotland through this evening and into tomorrow morning. Elsewhere across the south and east, it should stay fairly dry and clear throughout tonight. And as clear skies remain, temperatures will fall away well below freezing rurally, so expecting quite a widespread rural frost, the first of this season so far. As I said, across more northern areas, we're going to see some more significant sleet and, for some of us, snow. So an icy morning for parts of northeastern Scotland in particular. A lot of rain around across parts of Northern Ireland, western areas of Scotland, down towards northwestern England as well. A good deal of cloud as well. And this rain will fall as snow above around 150 metres, especially across parts of Scotland. And we'll continue